like to call to order the meeting of Tuesday, January 17, 2017 of the Duncannon Borough Council. I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for being here. Happy New Year. If I could ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Ms. Kelly, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Oh, sure.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. I'd like to welcome the Borough Secretary for a roll call of the officials present.
Mr. Crothermel.
Here.
Mr. Epley.
Present.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Nace.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Kirkhoff.
Here.
Ms. Young.
Here.
Mayor Capuana.
Here.
Solicitor Dissinger.
I am here.
Engineer Aycock.
I'm here.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for being here this evening. Just a reminder, if anyone has electronic devices of any sort, mobile phones, pagers, etc., please silence those or place them on vibrate. Moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, the meeting minutes from December. That's December 20th. You have before you for a day or two. If there's any comment or a motion for acceptance. I do have one question, and this may be for Bill. On page 1, under presentation, it says President Nace presented a plaque to Mayor, or for Mayor Conrad to his wife, Mrs. Genevieve Conrad. Is there any issue, because I was the acting mayor at that time, so I technically was holding both roles, I guess?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's fine.
Okay. Wanted to make sure. And then for Kathy, on page 4 at the very bottom, Mr. Kirkhoff stated an issue of site distances in the square had been borough. It should be brought. You're probably very used to saying borough a lot. That's all I had for the minutes. Any wish for action on the minutes as presented?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion by Mr. Epley, second by Mr. Crothermel to approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Move on then to public comment. On the sign-in document, the only person that's indicated they wish to speak is Ms. Nancy Gavin, 928 North Market. Welcome. And a thank you in advance. We welcome your business to the square. If anyone
Thank
doesn't
you.
know, this is the proprietor of Nancy's Soft Pretzels.
I have a few questions. I guess they're mostly for Chris. Who sponsored the New Year's Eve race?
I don't have any idea.
Well, how did they get permission?
I don't think anything came before council for the race.
No, the only knowledge I have of the New Year's Eve race is I saw a photo somewhere of it, so.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything on it. Going forward, could they have to get like some kind of permit or something? And I'll tell you why. All these athletes that were running had to have the closest spots they could possibly have to park in the square, and cost me a couple $100 worth of business that day. There should be event parking, in my opinion, for something like that. And if they're all athletes, they could have parked at Wheeler and walked or ran over to where they're meeting instead of in front of all of our shops. The other issue I have is I'm wondering why there's 2-hour parking on the square. What takes 2 hours on the square?
I can't answer that.
Well, I checked with all business people and they said no one are in their places for 2 hours. However, that's being used and abused. What can we do to enforce it?
We're in the process, in the transfer from the Penn Township Police Department providing coverage to our codes enforcement officer, Mr. Place, providing parking tickets. I don't believe, and Chris can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe that the parking enforcement has been a priority simply because the lack of business on the square, by and large. Some of the vacant properties and such, it's not often that the square is parked full. I wasn't down on the 31st or 30th, whatever the race was. So I didn't see that, but. yeah.
It's abused every day of the week,
The
particularly on weekends.
2-hour parking, I think, yeah, absolutely, and I think that's not new, that,
Well, I realize it's not
no,
new,
I'm saying it's
antiquated.
not just now that we don't have the police, they weren't enforcing that very well either. Anthony and I actually, your timing is perfect, we actually talked about that today, and talked about, now we didn't determine a complete plan because he's only 10 hours a week, but we talked about coming up with a plan of how we can approach that problem, and parking in the borough in general, as far as any kind of parking tickets. You know, and it may be as simple as either, you know, if we determine he needs more time so that he can do that, and we'll come to council and ask for his schedule to be expanded. It might just be that he can randomly, so that people know, you never know when you're gonna get one, and that means the threat is that you'd get a ticket, so that they would,
Does he work on Saturdays?
he does not.
That's the biggest problem. And it's my biggest day. It's everyone's biggest day, basically. There are overnight parkers that are taking all of the spaces.
There's, if I recall correctly, there's no restriction on Sundays. The 2-hour limit is Monday through Saturday, except Sundays and holidays, I believe.
Yeah, well, most of us don't care, about
Right.
Sundays, but
I don't think anything prevents Tony from working on Saturdays. If he's got some Saturday availability, Chris can kind of coordinate that or direct that.
can like a volunteer be like deputized or something to?
Maybe.
It's not just abuse of parking, there's a pattern. And I'll tell you right now, there's a pattern of a Mercedes-Benz from New York, 2 to 3 times a week. Does that send any red flags to anyone besides me?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. And there's an awful lot of traffic in my building.
First step is, we can
Yeah,
talk to Tony and try to see if we can have some Saturday hours. If you have license plate specific information,
Oh, I have pictures, I have license plates, I have descriptions, you tell me what you want.
manager@duncannonborough.org.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the parking, that is, we have identified that is probably the biggest issue we need to figure out a solution to, or one of the biggest anyhow, without having police coverage, because the state police will not issue parking tickets.
Yeah,
They
I
won't
know.
enforce local ordinances.
I tried.
One of the other discussions that we've had actually just last month from the streets committee was vehicle size and some visibility issues, sight distance on the square. So that may also be a deterrent for any larger vehicles to park in a period of time.
Well, that's, like large, what are you talking?
Well, I think that's
Huge
one thing
pickups or-
we're trying to define that, whether it's pickups, panel vans, ambulances, trucks, whatever the case may be. So things that impede visibility when you're trying to pull from Carmelo onto Market.
The traffic engineer is going to be here Friday. We're going to be looking at that, and he'll come up with recommendations for us.
So back to the 2-hour parking thing, what can we do about that?
It's currently in place by ordinance. The ordinance could be amended if that's appropriate. The ordinance was just reviewed in 2014.
Probably somewhere in that neighborhood.
The ordinance, the total borough parking ordinance was just reviewed and reenacted or kind of firmed up, amended, I believe in 2014. We can certainly take a look at that. We can get you a copy of it. It's also on the borough website if you'd like to take a look at it.
I'd just say, I'm the president of the streets committee, president, chairman, whatever we call it, the streets committee. I would hesitate just to go lower, because what if somebody wants to stop over at your place and then go get a haircut and do a couple things at once? You easily could get close to a 2-hour time span, and I just hesitate that
And like what?
you'd be limiting some, you could easily spend an hour getting your hair, not me, but some people could easily, spend an hour getting their hair cut and then.
And I'm sure some of that was driven by the bank being there.
Yeah.
And we don't know what business may go into the
Who
bank.
spends 2 hours in a bank, seriously? Like, I'm
I
not
can
being
tell you, people
smart.
spend 2 hours.
Yeah.
But, the expense of changing the signs and all of that, if we don't know what that other business is going to be.
I'll take up a collection. You want more business in town? This is what's gonna have to happen. I saw someone looking at the bank today, and I saw someone looking at the other storefront today on Market Street, which is if it gets sold and or rented, it's gonna be more business, but people can't be abusing the parking, which they are now. And it's definitely overnight, Friday to Saturday. It's overnight during the week, and it's the same vehicles over and over.
And overnight isn't the issue, because the 2-hour restriction ends at 6 PM.
Well, understood, but they're not moving it the next morning without
I
being
think the first
prodded.
step is that we get Tony on board and get him to start,
Looking at some Saturday mornings.
yes, looking at that.
Yeah, he's already
Once those
been-
people get the word, they'll start to move their vehicles. Then we'll look at it, Nancy, at the time
Yeah,
frame.
to get some enforcement first before we look at changing, I would say,
Yeah.
because maybe we do the enforcement, it does clear it up a little bit.
And if he wants a call, instead of just wasting time, how far away is he? I don't know.
Now, because he'd have to go there anyhow, to enforce the 2-hour
Right.
parking, you basically have to chalk the tires so that you can tell if they were there. He can't give them a ticket just because somebody observes a vehicle and tells them they were there for
Right.
2 hours. He has to actually see that to enforce it, so.
Well, that seems like a waste of money. I don't know why a
Well, that's the law, that's not,
I understood, but I
Yeah.
don't know why a volunteer can't do it.
the same reason a
to keep
volunteer
from-
can't be a police officer. Technically, it would be being vigilante parking enforcement, so.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem with that either, and that's what it's coming to.
Not until they turn you in, then you'd have a problem.
Hey, I have a permit to carry. It doesn't matter if it's hanging out my back pocket, and I made sure the Benz from New York could see it too. There's something funky going on there.
Nancy's Pretzels and Arms dealer.
So we'll get with Tony to start to keep an eye on it, and like I said, if you wanna take a look at the ordinance that's in place presently, it's on the website. And as you have some information on those vehicles, you can pass up to the office and, don't know what to look for, but also it can be turned over to the state police if there's anything.
And you will find that ordinance if you go in our.
I've already been there, but
Okay,
thank you.
well, but the ordinance that appears there in the regular part of the code is not the updated one that was passed in 2014. I found this out when Tony and I were investigating a related traffic type of situation, and we were trying to figure out something, find it in the code, so we did a search on it, and then it showed up because that phrase showed up in the new ordinance, and then we realized, oh, there's this new ordinance because it was there, but we didn't know what it was. Now there is a note on the website, because we have that capability to add notes. We can't update until we recodify, but we can put a note referring them to that ordinance, and so you would find that there. But so that has been done.
I have one more question. Thank you for looking into the parking. One more question. Excuse me. And I probably know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there any kind of ordinance in place for, I'm not even sure how I want to explain this, chronic renting to bad people? I mean,
I don't know how you create an ordinance like that.
yeah, me
I
neither.
think if we could, we would have something, but I don't know there's any proper legal way to do that.
I mean,
and
there
enforce
must
it.
be a website for idiots
people.
or us to rent a house on Market Street.
I think there are websites that you can have similar to that, but you have to pay for them, and
No, I mean, I think that's where these people apply to rent the house next to me. So there's nothing,
I wouldn't know of anything that would be realistic.
they took this is sort of off the subject, but they took a Blazer, backed it up to a Durango from the previous people that lived there, and smashed it into a tree. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Tony was working on the removal of that Blazer, so we were surprised to see it not there, and then we read in the paper that somebody was charged for hitting it.
Oh, Blazer or Durango? Maybe
Or the Durango, I mean,
No,
the
Blazer's
Durango was the
that
one, I'm sorry.
Smashed it into
The Durango with the
tree.
mattress and the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to, one of the things we had to do for Tony, and this has to do with the parking, is we had to get him authorized to be able to get access to vehicle registration information, which, he'll call into the county and get that now like a police officer would, so that if we issue a ticket, and they don't pay, we have to, be able to follow up with a citation, so that's part of the enforcement process. So he was waiting for that authorization to be approved, and the Durango disappeared,
Oh, so
so.
when we have to call like the state police, now that we don't have our own, should I like send you an email of what happened so you're a little more familiar?
We'll work on that with
Because
the
I've had
state
the
police
state
to have.
police more than once,
The state police.
and they're very cooperative, by the way.
The state police generally enforce anything in Title 18, which is the Pennsylvania Crimes Code, and anything in Title 75, which is the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code. Outside of that, they don't do any local ordinance enforcement.
Right.
So all the parking is by local.
Yeah, understood. But I mean, when we're having an issue like that, should I have sent you, Chris, an email? That way you would have known what was going on, or?
Well, we were aware of the Durango that
Smashed
was
into
there,
the
that,
tree?
because we were aware it was there, that it was abandoned, that it did not have valid registration or inspection,
Oh, okay.
and we're working on being able to remove it. And then we noticed it up against the tree, and thought, why did somebody push it up against the tree? And,
Oh, no, it
Then
let
it-
loose and
well-
went uphill and smashed itself into the tree. That's
well, that was, like I say, it was confusing
That's
to
what
us,
they
and then it disappeared, but the mattress and the table that were on top of it were still laying there.
Well, the tow truck driver set that.
Well, and we did have that picked up. We don't have anybody to bill for the special items, but we just had the crew go out and get that and get it out of there, so.
Okay, well, I appreciate your time. Any cooperation we can get on the square with the parking would be greatly appreciated. Because quite a few of these people that are abusing it have parking elsewhere.
We'll start the process and certainly pass along the Saturday as a concern.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything they would like to present as a public comment? Okay. Is there anyone else that signed in that wasn't on the list? That's right, Madam Secretary. Move then on to appointments, resignations, correspondence, proposals, and citizen action forms. I've got two items. The first is I received an email from our former vacancy board chair. He is moving out of the borough, or has moved out of the borough, dated Tuesday, December 20th. This email is to inform you of my resignation from the borough position of vacancy board chair effective immediately due to my moving out of Duncannon Borough. I would like to thank Borough Council for this opportunity and appreciate having the ability to assist the borough and council in this capacity. Respectfully, Edward Green. So we have a vacancy board chair vacancy. We did reach out to the colonel, to Ron Leonhard, and I believe he indicated he would be interested if that's a point of consideration, where we can put it out and open it up to the public for a vacancy board chair. That position will be appointed until the next reorganization, which will be January of 2018. Is there any wish for action on that tonight? Okay. Spread the word. The other item is, I believe everyone probably received this, but it's correspondence from the State Association of Boroughs. Their annual conference is in May at the Hershey Lodge, so it's local, May 7th through 10th. There is a line item in the budget for training. There is a cost associated with this, but I think there's typically a lot of good information. I did look closely at the syllabus, but the list of courses and such are included here. So if anyone didn't get this, also pass this along, or it's on their website as well. Did you get one, Chris?
I did not. Thank you.
So if there's any other information there. Any other appointments, resignations, correspondence, proposals, or citizen action forms from the table? Okay. Move one, I'm sorry.
Just for information, we did receive a letter of resignation from the forester, but he has rescinded that. He had some confusion, and I spoke with him about it and cleared it up, and somehow he got in his head that we had agreed to become part of the Conservancy program when the actual action you took was for him to come back with another proposal. And it was odd because last month when I talked to him and he wasn't feeling well and couldn't be here for that presentation, he never mentioned anything, so I talked to him and we cleared that up. He is still under the weather, but hopes to be able to be here in February. He needs to get feeling well enough to get out and walk around and do some, looking at the area before he comes back with the proposal. I told him since I knew we weren't going to do anything in the winter, I didn't think that would be a problem, that he gets healthy first.
Yeah, it was a pretty clear motion to move forward with the
Yeah.
paper cut.
Yep.
Roger was very clear about that. Okay.
I did get some correspondence around the Pennsylvania State Mayors Association, if we were interested.
Okay. Very good. Is that like a membership?
Yeah.
I know we've historically provided that membership, it's what, $20 a year or so?
That
Yeah.
one's 60.
Okay.
60.
Are you interested in becoming a member of the Mayor's Association?
That one I think would be good, because that's just Pennsylvania. I think that'd be a good one to be part of.
I'll move that we approve membership in the Pennsylvania State Mayor's Association for Mayor Capuano.
Second.
If I not to interrupt, but also the mayor can attend the boroughs convention.
Yes, certainly,
Because
certainly.
there's activities for the mayors there.
There's a lot of mayors
Yeah,
there.
yeah, did you get one?
I didn't get one.
Okay. Do we have any extras in the office of those?
Of what?
The,
I have a copy, I'll
One in
give it to him.
Chris's
on their
box, so if
website,
you gave him
too.
yours,
Oh.
we can give him Chris's.
okay. There's one in somebody's box up in the front room, but we'll get it for you, I'll increase it on the website as well. So I made the motion, I heard 3 seconds.
I have Roger.
On that side.
Roger was first, I think.
Okay.
Roger was loudest.
New guy, give it
Motion by me, a second by Mr. Williams to enroll Mayor Capuano in the Pennsylvania State Mayor's Association. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. John, do you want to fill this out and give it back to Chris, and they'll take care of processing it? Anything else under item 7? Moving on to item 8, general reports, starting with the borough engineer, Ms. Acock.
You have our engineer's report in your packets. I'd just like to highlight that the reservoir lining project will be advertised January 19th and the 26th. According to our schedule, barring any unforeseen circumstances, the bid opening is scheduled for February 16th. And then we would be awarding bids at the February Borough Council meeting on the 21st. And as was mentioned earlier, the LTAP representative is going to come up on Friday and meet with Chris, look at the square, and assess the potential site distance issues, and do a letter report and with recommendations, and that is free of charge.
Excellent. Thank you for starting that process with that.
You're welcome.
Do you have any action items or anything you need from us?
No, I do
didn't see
not.
anything in your report. Okay. Anything else?
That's it?
Outstanding. Does anyone else have anything?
What time would the bid openings be on the 16th?
I do not have it right here on, let me see, Roger. I think it's 10, but it's in the advertisement, so bear with me a second here.
Greg, just an FYI, I don't know if the financing is in place for that at this point in time yet,
Right, right.
so you're aware.
That's all right, you can get back to us then.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
you.
10 o'clock,
10? Thank you.
yeah.
Is that
10 o'clock.
here?
And also, we have a pre-bid meeting in there for February 9th, in case anybody is interested, so we can pick them up.
And that time,
That would be 10 a.m.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else from the engineer? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Move then to the public works operator, Todd.
Council has a report, I don't have anything else to add.
Question, was there, 2 questions actually, was there a water system report? I only got wastewater.
Yes.
Okay. You only got water?
Oh, you know what, that would have been me.
What's that?
I bet everybody got every other one when I put them in the packets, because I only have water.
I don't have water.
So that was totally my fault. They were not stapled together, but they were on one stack.
We need bigger words at the top there. in case it's-
Maybe emoticons?
No, I wondered why I had so many left over.
Um,
But I have them up there both. Do you want me to grab them? Because I have them for,
If you would, that would
I have
be
them for the JOAC on Thursday, so I have them ready.
And a request on these, I don't know how easy this is to do, but we always always have, it seems, a growing list of pending items. And I know there's been a lot of discussion in the past on whose responsibility or who's handling those, or perhaps you need action from this table to move forward with some of those items. If there could be maybe a column added under pending items to status, you know, PESI in the works, awaiting council approval, awaiting funds, you know, something like that, that we could have a very clear picture of where it is.
Gotcha.
And if you're, we don't, I think as we've said a couple times, if we can afford to do it and something needs to be done, we don't wanna hold you up in trying to get these projects done, because we find we see more and more NOVs. And I saw that the borough should authorize the engineer to prepare the annual chapter 94 waste load management report. I don't know what that is. Is that something we're ready to do? Is that something that you need something from us?
That's something the engineer does, and I don't know at what point,
Well, there's you and Mark, but
it's due the
I
end of
thought
March.
you guys were doing it
No,
now.
you can,
What's our office doing?
So this is exactly why. Just so.
I'm sure Greg knows, but.
Okay.
Well,
Just so no one assumes someone else is doing it.
right, and that's why I put on there when I know something's coming, like the annual water supply report, the chapter 110, we do all that.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I put on there the borough should approve
Yeah,
that.
and maybe if there's a column that says PESI is completing or PESI in progress, something like that, that would be a help. And then the dumpster at the plant is full, however, the landfill will not take it since the Form 43 has not been returned to them.
I believe, yeah, Chris.
That's been, finally, we've got that straightened out.
Okay.
So it's just a matter of getting that form submitted. But we had, actually, Pannoni reviewed it and cleared up the questions that we had.
Okay.
That was the one that Mr. Finnan and I both were concerned because it had some pretty strong language on there about the, you know, if you sign this thing, the
I remember
penalties,
that. I
and
remember
we didn't have knowledge of the stream of the waste to be able to do it, and eventually we did get that resolved. Obviously, we need to get that out of there. It became less of a pressing issue because we're going to, pardon the pun, because we're going to be hauling the liquid, but it still has to be taken care of, that dumpster, so.
And do we know, for item number 2, the bar screen has deteriorated. I've heard the bar screen come up many times in conversation. Do we have an estimate on what?
$110,000.
That's what I was afraid of. Okay. So that's something,
Now that, is that for a new, is that for a new screen
That's to replace that,
on top?
yes. That's to replace that system.
Is that to go in the wet well?
Sir,
What?
it's to replace the system that is there right now.
So
We
the
are
bar
working on a
screen
new
and the
design
screen.
for the plant, so that's why we have not pursued that issue.
Yeah. Actually, I'll touch on a little of that in my report. Well, I can say now, we had the first meeting to begin the planning process. Greg Rogowski and Bob and I, and Jeff had another commitment that day, but what we did is we set out a timetable so that we could respond to DEP. And the other thing that we did is we took a look at, with Greg's advice, we prioritized what are the things that we should do now with the plant as it is, and what are the things that would be a waste to do now because in the project that we're planning would be replaced. I don't have my notes from that to tell you exactly how that impacted the bar screen. I don't know, Bob, if you remember. I know we did talk about that, but is that the one, because of that vertical screen is gonna be, does that replace that, or is that?
Yes,
Pretty much so, yes.
yes.
Yeah.
The whole combinator situation is gonna be changed out in the new
Right.
design.
Right.
And your screen, your grit screen, that whole system is going to be changed out too.
I think we're
So,
talking about two different things.
yeah, we're talking two different things here.
Number 15 I should have as influence screen, meaning up on the 3rd floor.
Correct.
The bar screen I'm talking about now is down in the wet well, so when the grinder's out, there's no screening prior to those
Correct.
pumps for big chunks.
Correct, and we're working on that.
So
We
that
should
is-
have an answer for that Thursday night.
Yeah, so that's a weld or something,
Yes.
yeah.
All they are is, what that reminds you of now, what he's talking about is your grates, like on top of your storm sewers, that's, just invert that. That's in
Right.
front of that to catch large debris from going through. And yes, we are working on that issue.
are there any of the 17 items on here that are critical or like, I mean, we have the DEP issues and some of them are identified here. Are any of these critical to the operation in the next several weeks.
Well, if they're gonna take care of that Thursday night, that's critical, because the pump blocks and then we're.
But that's why that caught my attention.
So two-
Daily pump blockages.
That's the most severe that's on there. A lot of the rest have been there. Of course, the commuter, but that is, what did they say, Chris, 6, 8 weeks?
Yeah.
4 to 6.
4 to 6, yeah, so.
But they were going to try to rush it, so I don't know if that means
That
anything.
is the
or not.
most critical.
And that's something else that, in addition to the responsible party and status, maybe have them by priority or list the priority, high, medium, low, or critical,
Okay.
you know. And I think by no means am I an expert on these systems, and I don't think any of us at the table are, with maybe a few exceptions. So just having as much information as we can, that'll help us, I think, to make the best decisions we can reasonably make.
I have a question for you. The spare parts purchased for the Combinator, I know we talked about that here. Didn't we say that we sourced where we could get all of them within a certain amount of time?
That was a
pump,
That was the blower.
or blower, I'm sorry. But I don't think, you know, when we have, depending what parts we're talking about, if the commodore is gonna go away, you know, I'd be hesitant because we're gonna have it rebuilt, it'll be like new. I'd be hesitant to stock too many parts for something that we're gonna get rid of, so.
Yeah, I think we're just
we need-
talking like shear pins,
Mm-hmm.
something quick and easy that can be done, you know.
And next, my other question was for Kevin, just to make sure. Did we get, to get everything set up to pump liquid, is that all taken care of? Are we still working on that?
Still.
And Chris, you're gonna
That's all I had.
discuss the contract?
Yes,
Do you wanna wait for your report to do that?
it doesn't matter.
Well, while we're looking at the wastewater, since I just got the water, I assume this is a typo, but it said we had 3,779,000,000
Yeah.
779,000 gallons of water.
Just trying to get more cash in the pot for you. That is a typo.
I assume that was the case.
Let's drop the last three
If we can
zeros.
supply that much water, scrap the reservoir, okay? Because we've got it held somewhere else.
That's right.
So we're taking out the
Drop
last
the last
3
three
zeros.
zeros. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Is there anything else on the wastewater or water system reports for Pessig or from Pessig?
I'll just comment real quick, the phosphorus, the last three reports, it is finally dropping under permit limits. So we're hoping January, we will be violation-free on that particular item.
Outstanding. Is there anything else on which you need action from us tonight on wastewater or water?
Just if you want to discuss now the contract.
You should have in your packets a proposed contract for water and wastewater operations on the professional services agreement from Pessig.
This is, if you recall, in the budget process, we had gotten a proposal and decided to go with the idea of having 2 operators because of all the problems, so that somebody could be working on the maintenance while somebody's doing the, you know, the day-to-day operations and so forth, because they often get in a situation where they gotta pull somebody off and they send somebody extra and it costs us more and so forth. It is budgeted for, however, we just got the proposal, the new agreement, just came Thursday or Friday of last week by email. So what I told Todd and what I put in my written report to you was, my suggestion would be that we approve the second operator at that cost as an, you know, moderation, or moderate, an amendment or whatever to our current contract, you know, as a change there, until we have a chance to review this, have the solicitor review it. You know, this is a proposal from them, you know, council's had no input on the terms of it, so you need to have time before you agree to the contract to review it. And, you know, I think especially the utilities committee and so forth, and I think the authority people, we should get their input.
And we
You know,
need
they're-
the joint authority too, Chris, because they pay a third of it.
Yes, and there may be things that you want to see, you know, different, whether it's something additional, and then we'd have to talk to Todd about what that would entail financially, if there was something more you want them to do, or if there's any changes just in, you know, anything else in there that you want in there. So the idea would be so that they can get started and, because that'll be a big part of some of the stuff we have to get done. The idea was to go ahead and give them the go-ahead to put the second person in under the terms of the current agreement, and then, by next month, have the review completed and act on the contract.
Has Bill seen this?
No, we just got it.
I'm in favor of that, Chris. Month-to-month basis until we review this and the sewer authority and the joint authority review it and we get all the comments back. I don't, month-to-month thing's fine with me. As far as my opinion,
Is that a motion?
yes it is.
Is that acceptable on your end?
Yeah, I'll just generate a letter and we'll
Okay.
just, it is.
Basically an addendum to the existing
Yeah,
agreement.
it'll be, the cost will be whatever it is. Yeah.
We have a motion?
Yes.
Second. Motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Epley. To continue the terms of our current contract with a second operator on a month-by-month basis to be determined until we've had time and the appropriate entities have had time to review the proposed professional services agreement. Does that include a review by the solicitor?
Yes,
Second.
Of course.
You didn't specify that, but I want to make sure.
I'm sorry. I wouldn't leave Bill out.
Any further discussion?
Freely,
All those in favor of your consent by saying aye?
right?
All those opposed? Same sign. Okay, motion carries. You can get that letter to us, so you're always going to go from there.
I did have a question, I didn't get it in quick enough. I don't think it changes anything. How long is this for? Because it's not a month to month, we have 30 days to review it.
Yearly.
Annual, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I didn't see that either in the next, so that,
Yeah, the same.
they've typically been annually, but I didn't
Yes.
see that specified, okay. Do you have anything else, Todd?
No, thank you.
Anything else, Chris, for Todd?
Not at the moment.
We'll move then on to the solicitor, Mr. Disson.
I have nothing to report.
We have items for you.
Very good.
If you recall, a few months ago, we authorized, several months ago now, the solicitor to pursue, whether it's a petition or whatever the process is with the Pennsylvania Public Utilities Commission, to remove the or to remove the PUC oversight from the electric system. That's generated by the 27, I believe, out-of-borough electric customers we have. If we were only in borough, we wouldn't be under their oversight, but because we have a very small number of out-of-borough customers, we're under their oversight. I was actually here in the office the day that the auditor from the PUC was here doing his job, and he suggested it to us. That's where that came from, as it's kind of I don't say waste of their time, but not a tremendously good use of their time to audit for 27 customers. So we started that conversation. Bill, after looking at it, felt, I think, that it wasn't something you do every day. We should solicit special counsel. Chris proceeded with that, and we received 3 proposals we reviewed in the public, or the legal committee, legal personnel committee. Reviewed them very, very off the top, and I'd like to, if no one's opposed, turn these over to Bill for review, and then upon Bill's review, as far as the legal content goes, we can set up some interviews or some meet and greets with the firms and decide if it's something that we want to take on based on what an estimated cost will be. There's, one of them had a fixed cost for the process, assuming no litigation or challenges, of $5,000. The other 2 were both on an hourly basis. I think one was actually a monthly basis. There were 2 options, there was an hourly and a monthly.
Or monthly, yeah.
So we just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples and the terms are different. 3 firms are Eckert Siemens, Hawk, McKeon, and Smisic, Harrisburg, and the Lanza firm LLC. All 3 are Harrisburg, I believe. Eckert Siemens, I believe, is Harrisburg as well. Yes, they're all Harrisburg City. So I'll make a motion to turn these 3 proposals as a result of our RFP for PUC engagement over to the solicitor for review.
Second.
I made the motion, Christie with the second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We have, do you have the copies for him?
Yes.
Okay. Chris will make sure you have those before you leave.
I just want to see the names on it, I'll hand it back then later.
I want to take a better look at them, but we look at them. Anything else for the solicitor? see anyone here from the fire company. Have we received anything from the fire chief?
No.
Anything from the fire company this evening? We want to the mayor. Mayor Capuano, welcome.
Thank you.
First full meeting.
I know. Nope, I'm good.
Under the mayor's report, we do have a written codes enforcement report as well. If there are any questions or comments, we will return to Tony in addition to the solicitation for some Saturday time, some Saturday hours on the streets. Anything for the mayor or for codes? Okay. Move on to the secretary's report. Kathy.
I have nothing.
Okay. The borough manager, letter H under item 7.
Okay.
The item 8. Mr. Porter.
Couple of things first that came up, just informational things that came up after the report, your written report was completed, just to update you on. We received our reimbursement from the big winter storm that was about a year ago. The interesting thing about this was that we thought we were going to be getting $24,000. We got $18,000. The reason being, the state did not contribute the 25% to the funding for the disaster. It's only, all we got was 75% federal money. And that was not mentioned in any of the meetings that we had, that was the way it was going to be handled. I know from my experience with the flood in 2011, typically the state does kick in their percentage, but that was the reason. But still, it's $18,000, and we certainly are happy to get that into our bank account. You'll see in the treasurer's report that actually that puts the general fund in the black without having to borrow from, from the timber fund as we had authorized at this point.
And that wasn't just the borough that only received 75%. I think that was globally throughout the
Yes,
disaster.
that's for the disaster.
And
That's not.
I handled the claim for the EMS company, and we were expecting, I think, $6,200, ended up getting $4,900. And I questioned it as well, because I remember nothing at our kickoff meeting in Bloomfield, nothing that was explicit in any of the paperwork that it wasn't going to be the full amount. And then when the money was transferred, it was all electronic. When it showed up in the account, the amount wasn't right. I immediately emailed the contact at FEMA, and they said, yeah, it's only 75%, there's no further explanation. So the 25% not being matched by the state would be explanation, but I don't know why that was. I don't know what happened.
The state apparently didn't authorize the funding, so.
Makes it a challenge.
Next item, I wanted to just let you know, after the boil water advisory that we had, the last one, we did hold an after-action review. We sat down, Todd was there, and we had our staff, and we took a look at what happened and what lessons we can learn from that. I'm still compiling the report. I didn't get a chance to get it completed because we've had so many other things come up, but that is in the works, and you'll get that prior to the next meeting, so you'll have it to review. The idea, it's not to have a witch hunt or to pin blame on anybody or anything like that. It's to take a look at, first of all, what happened, how did we handle it, what could we do better, what changes should we make, including in our response and, notification and anything else involved in the incident. We looked real hard at, kind of why we had the clog, why this happened, and what steps could be taken. And I know that Pannoni and Pesci are both looking at some different alternatives. Depending what it is, we may have to amend our permits with DEP, but we are taking a look at, at that very closely to get at the root. We had that same problem for the variations of the same problem caused all three of those boil water advisories in the past year. And, that should not keep happening, and that's why, going forward, we will do this kind of thing anytime we have a major incident in the borough that we have to, that we respond to, so we can learn from it and do better the next time. Anybody want tested? You don't need to go in the men's room and fill it. We've received the testing bottles from Fairway Labs that we're going to have for the lead testing program. We will be disseminating the information in the next couple of days, how the program will work. I'm waiting for the instructions. They gave us all the bottles and the chain of custody labels are on them, but they didn't give instructions. As Councilman Williams can tell you, it's very important. He's one of the places that we sample on a regular basis. there's a protocol on how long you have to let your water sit and so forth, you know, before you, I believe it's 6 hours that you're, you know, so in the morning, first thing is when you do it, and things like that. In conjunction with that, and Todd mentioned this in his report about working on the, some of this other stuff that we have to do, I forget what's the exact phrase for your testing protocol that we have to do now.
Well, we got the plan, but we have to have the materials investigation.
Yeah, we now have to sample 20 places every 6 months. We used to just do 10. And at least, half of them have to be tier 1?
As
Minimum?
many as possible.
As many as possible. Tier 1 meaning places that have the type of plumbing that would make them at higher risk. The one slight problem we have with trying to populate the testing spots with tier 1 is that we don't have very good records to tell us where properties are that have that. There was a survey that Todd found in the records that was from, I want to say like 2001 or 2004, probably the last time that we had a lead violation in town. But it's a list of 20 or 30 properties written in pencil with some notes on it. So what we're going to do is, in conjunction with the testing, we're going to have forms that when they turn back in, you know, with their information, but we're also going to have a small survey on there to try to help us identify properties so that we can be compliant in the interim while we look to do a more complete survey, which I'll discuss in a minute. So that'll get started. Another item that came up, I've been invited down to Marysville.
Question?
Sure.
Are you aware that some people that normally get the robocalls did not get them? And is there a way we can check to see if we were permanently dropped or if it was just an anomaly?
We do not drop anybody. The odds are if you didn't get it, you didn't have, you know, somebody didn't have voicemail or you know, an answering machine or something.
No, there's quite a few of us that didn't get it.
You know, I can check with, if you wanted to give me your number.
But can we check ourselves somewhere?
You
to
can
see
go
if-
on, you can go on the borough's website and sign up, and that way you'll be sure. Now, if it's a cell phone, you have to sign up to get it on the cell phone, because they don't,
Right.
but.
Which I did years ago and never had a problem until this last
Yeah,
boil water advisory. But then when I started checking with other people that normally also get the notification, they didn't get it either.
This is the first we've heard of it, so.
Okay, I didn't know if you were
We'd
aware.
have to
We
check.
get a report, we pay, that's a third party that does that.
Right, right.
Code Red is
Right.
the service. We get a report, I believe, or a report can be printed from the software showing all the numbers and what actually the outcome was, whether it was a message.
I don't know that it shows all the numbers. It shows how many people were
Maybe,
dialed,
okay.
how many answered, how many
It's the aggregate, I
went
don't know
to.
if that's individual.
I don't know that it has individual.
I thought that was an option, maybe I misspoke.
Nah, and I think perhaps the reason that you can't is because I have experience with Code Red previously. The database, even though our residents are giving them their information, is their database, because they, I guess, are afraid somebody will, you know, take that list of numbers and transfer it to another service or something. So they don't give us a copy of, you know, who all is signed up.
But
It's
perhaps
supposed to hit
individual
every
number,
landline.
check it.
They're supposed to get every landline from the phone company. You know, it's supposed to provide them with every landline, and then the cell phones, of course, you know, people have to sign up. But if you wanna just go on there and put your stuff in
Go in
again,
again.
just to make sure, and, you know, I don't know, this is, like I said, this is the first I've heard of anybody that they didn't get the call. Usually we get calls from somebody, I moved out of town, take me off that darn list.
Yeah, understood.
So, you know, hearing that they didn't get it is the opposite complaint that we usually get.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's
What's
quite
the
all right.
cost per test? I just wondered, what's the
$20.
resident cost? $20?
$20,
People have
yeah.
asked me that before, so.
Yeah, $20, it's based on our rate that we get, you know, for the commercial, for the plant and so forth. For comparison, we are required by DEP, under the lead regulations, to provide people with a list of labs that are accredited that they can take it to. The nearest one is ALS, which is outside of Middletown, and they charge $30, so somebody would have to drive it down there. You know, your cost between the gas and your time and the $30 would be pretty extensive. Fairway will come here and pick them up when their courier comes to make his regular pickups from our plant. So it will be very convenient for the residents. The next item, I got a call last week. I've been invited to a meeting the end of the month down in Marysville about natural gas. I'll be very honest, I don't see this being something that's going to necessarily benefit the borough, but I think it's worth, finding out what they have to say. The idea that they're looking at is the possibility of tapping into the pipeline that comes through, between here and Marysville to provide gas service to the communities. I don't, who's going to foot the bill to put pipes in to, for all the homes and so forth. I think if you have some new developments, maybe that will work, but like I said, we'll see what they have to say and what they talk about, and if there's something to go further, then, we can always certainly keep informed on it.
I received an email from someone at the township. I just got this late last night or the night before about that. Let me just find it. Township, Sunday at 8:43 p.m. I don't know if Helen sent this. Oh, no, it's B. Peters 3 at PD Duncan, so it must be Brian Peters. It's a forward from Scott Weaver. On the mines for natural gas on Tuesday, January 31st at 9 a.m. at the Marysville Borough Office. Please invite others that would have a stake in the project. Duncannon Borough Council, Chris Corrigan. Although this is not a Marysville project, it will be a multi-municipal county project. Thanks, look forward to seeing you. So if there's anyone else who would like to attend, it's 9 a.m. on Tuesday, January 31st. The natural gas stuff has been discussed several times, both at the county level and I've heard in Penn Township and Marysville as well. Again, like Chris said, I don't know what the reality is for the borough of Duncannon, but it's an item that I've had tenants ask me about when I've had new tenants come into the borough. So certainly for some of the development around us, there may be some opportunities. And I don't know if it was, one of the discussions I had previously heard was not tapping into the natural gas lines, but the holding stations, the pumping stations of some sort.
They
Truck it in and then.
They had, apparently they had looked at that. I saw news reports that they had looked at that previously and then rejected that idea.
Okay.
When Scott called me, he specifically talked about this idea of, being able to connect to the pipeline too.
Okay.
So.
Very good.
At last month's council meeting, we were asked to do an inventory based on the snow emergency routes, and happy to tell you that all the snow emergency routes in the borough that are defined in our ordinances are signed. They are not all signed adequately. Some are faded. Sometimes we go a block or two without. We did order a dozen signs. They're only like $19 or $20 a piece, so we did get a dozen in to replace the ones that are faded and to make some changes. I'll have a complete report, street by street, for the streets committee, and I think you might want to take a look at, are we naming the right routes as our snow emergency routes. I think for the most part we probably are, but we have a couple places where we're some very narrow alleys. One place, trying to think, you come up, what's the street that's right by the church, and then you turn on the church and then go up, I think it's Hall. It's an awful narrow route for a fire truck or an emergency vehicle, and I don't know if there might be a more appropriate way to get people to the top of the hill with emergency vehicles, in the event of a snow emergency. But again, I'll have that report for the streets committee to take a look at and determine if there's anything they want to do differently there.
Did you find any streets that are marked snow emergencies but are not identified as such in the ordinance?
No.
Okay.
Well, no, but I didn't really go looking for those. I took the ordinance and all the streets on that and toured those to inventory the signs, and but I don't know that I saw anywhere that shouldn't be. And then one other thing here, before we get to the stuff on the agenda, I got this notice from the township, the Perry County Association of Township Officials, Saturday, February 25th, they are going to hold their 104th annual county convention, and they have extended the invitation to boroughs in the county as well as borough council members and administrative staff. They're going to have an exhibition hall, workshops. I don't know what the workshops will be at this time. And then they also have a general workshop, a general session. It wraps up, it starts at 8 in the morning, wraps up at 1 o'clock. So we'll try to get more information about what those workshops are and get that out to you all. But then if you want to let us know, anybody that wants to attend, we'll get everybody registered. It's $15 and it includes continental breakfast and a delicious turkey luncheon.
What day was that?
February 25th.
I've attended that in the past, and when that was announced, I think at a Wheatfield Township meeting, I asked Vicki to send me the information. And I then contacted Brenda Benner at the county, because the township officials association has been pretty active. They do their conference every year. It's a networking opportunity. Certainly, the townships in the county are facing many of the same issues as the others. I think the boroughs in the county are facing many of the same issues. So I reached out to Brenda to see if there ever had been, or if there still was any kind of boroughs association, or as much as what happens in the townships that surround us affect us, if there was, any discussion about a joint joint group. And, certainly the borough code and the second-class township code are very different in some ways, but I think a lot of the guts of the issues are the same. Brenda encouraged me to contact Ann Simonetti, who was formerly a council member in Marysville. I don't think she lives in Marysville anymore, but she indicated that there was a boroughs association in the county at one point, or there is a boroughs association. Ann would be, do you know anything, Maria, because you were in Marysville?
Yeah, when Ann was president of the Borough Association, we were very active in the Perry County Boroughs Association, so you did have your own. Now, whether it's still active or not, but Ann would probably know better than anyone. If you don't have her contact, I can reach out.
I think I do, and she attends the travel, or the transportation study meetings on Thursday, so I'll hopefully see her there.
Yeah, so then check with her, but I know we were very active in 2008, 2009, 2010.
See, and I became mayor in '04, and I don't remember
Because we
Duncannon
had one
ever being
of our
involved.
meetings we had at the Moose in Marysville.
Okay.
It does still exist, because I've been to one of the
I
meetings.
think it takes in a bigger area than just Perry County. It's
Okay.
like the Cumberland County, Cumberland Perry.
Okay.
They do it together, because we went to a couple events in Cumberland County too, so maybe just because it's a relatively small county and so is Cumberland, they decided to have the joint boroughs association. Or you could check with PSAB also.
Okay.
We actually, there is a Perry County Boroughs Association. In fact, we just got the renewal notice for our dues. I think it's like $40. We are members of it, and the meeting that I attended that they had previously was in conjunction with the Township Association. There was
Because we have the Council of Governments, which is a separate entity primarily for building code. And that was kind of where I was headed with that, because there are so many different entities, but do we really need that number of entities? And we all have, I think, many of the same issues, so.
It's definitely a worthwhile organization and get a nice dinner out of it. But again, since I haven't been, part of the association for a while, I didn't know. So I'm glad this was ever up.
If you get any correspondence from them, pass that along to the table.
Yeah, the only thing we got was the renewal thing. So. I'm going to skip to number 3 quick and 4 first, because the lead water update will take a little longer. The sewer committee plant committee update we already talked about. That we had that meeting, and that letter actually Greg wrote the letter, and it is going to DEP, which is the first step in satisfying what they want from us from that meeting that we had down there. The handicap parking space review. Received an email, it should have been a copy in your packets, from a property owner complaining that there are 2 handicap parking spots on their block, that the people no longer live there. At the same time, in reviewing that, I looked, and our ordinance doesn't have any provision for how we remove those if somebody moves out. Additionally, I did consult with Bill just briefly on the phone to find out I'm not sure, and I don't know if you had a chance to do more research on it, whether it's even enforceable when it's set by resolution as opposed to ordinance. Have some ideas on it, and I think it would be good for the streets committee for us to discuss it. I think one thing would be if we set these up and have people apply annually just to recertify that they are, still there, still disabled. We have so many, renters and so much moving in and out in the borough that I think that would be, one way that we could look at, but there might be other ways that we can determine. And the other thing that I noticed that I think is important is that we don't have anything in our procedure for setting those up. There's no fee involved, and it does cost us some money for the guys to go out and, put up a sign and paint the lines and everything. Typically, that's the kind of thing that you have a user fee to cover because it's not an expense that the whole taxpayer base should be paying to benefit the one individual. That's, again, that's a
Not
council
ADA.
policy decision. That's not anything to do with ADA.
But-
We are not required to.
Because it's not
Provide
their
them.
space. They're requesting a space near their place, but it's not, reserved for
A
Christie
lot
Young.
of the boroughs, some of the boroughs have a annual and with a fee renewal. Because there's a procedure in the vehicle code for handicapped people to come and ask for a handicap parking place to be established. Not a lot of rules about it. You don't have to do an engineering traffic study, which is one thing. It's a little unclear about whether you have to do it by ordinance. Or if just having an ordinance that says then you can establish them on this application basis by resolution is sufficient. I know Carlisle does each specific parking place by ordinance. Other municipalities do it differently. Interestingly enough, there is a vigilante provision in handicap spaces where we can authorize folks who are placard to issue on behalf of the borough statements to the people who are parking there improperly. So that's kind of your volunteer enforcement thing. Some do charge fee. One I saw was $125. But what occurred to me was exactly what Christie was saying, that when you establish these are not specific to any person. So you're going to have somebody come in and paying a fee and then somebody else parking there, which...
And historically, the borough didn't charge a fee, and it was made very clear when, the response was to the person that requested the space that, we'll put a space, in proximity to your home where it's reasonable, safe, and appropriate, but it's not your space. It's a public space on public right of way, anyone with the appropriate placard can legally park there.
Yeah, I do like the idea of the annual, maybe review or renewal of it, because otherwise you end up with.
Yeah, we never had a closure, provision. It would always apply for them and they can't stay until.
I have some examples of different ordinances. I can pass them along, and if you want to take a look at,
If
kind
you
of
want to pass along the streets committee.
Yeah, I can do that.
Take a look.
Sure.
I know in the past, they was just brought to council that the spot was no longer needed. Council approved to get rid of it. That's what we done in the past.
One of the things when we did this traffic study back in about 2014 was that if we established one of these in a block and the person didn't need it anymore, we were going to leave it there as a parking space for any other handicapped person to come in. Now, the two they're talking about here, possibly one could be gotten rid of, but and this wasn't formulated in any paperwork or anything. It was just decided that we would leave that space there. Somebody else in the block might need it in the future. Maybe nobody needs it at the present time, but we were going to leave it there because it was established at that time.
Looks like there's, if the email's correct, which I didn't verify this, but looks like there's one currently at,
Tom Evans' place and then one at Baker's.
in front of the house at 221 North High Street, and there was also one at 215, so within a couple doors there are two. So, if you want to take a look and see which one makes most sense as a thief and which one.
There's no residence at 215.
Right.
Correct.
If
say, I was gonna say, I think one of them said they didn't have, it was at the home that's not there.
Right.
If neither one has a specific resident that uses it, though, it doesn't make sense to me to keep a handicap space on the block.
I think the point was that somebody could move into the block and then we don't have to go through the whole thing of, or somebody could come to visit near that block and there's then a space open, you never know.
There's a church right across the street,
Yeah.
isn't there?
Yeah, but the parking's the whole way in the back.
I mean, that'd be a good,
Oh, you
that's a
mean
good
for
place
the,
to
oh,
leave it.
gotcha, yes, that makes sense, sorry. I was looking at it the other way. I was-
Yeah.
Which side are they more concerned about?
Sounds like they're both on the same side.
Both on
Yeah,
the same
but
side.
there's an alley in between.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think she'd like the one in front of the house to
Yeah,
be
it sounds like they want the one at 221
correct.
to be removed, because it's right in front of the house and new owners
And that's down.
north.
Towards Philpotts.
Take away Bakers? That's my motion.
To remove the other one.
Yes.
Which one? The one in front of the house.
215,
Yes.
he's saying. Wait, are you saying in front of the house or in front of the
But
empty lot?
Bakers would be more appropriate for the church,
Correct.
So you want to remove the other one?
of the other.
Okay,
Yes.
I thought you said it the other way.
No, for,
He did.
You did.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
for what's his name? Used to be
What's his
manager.
name? That's,
Remove the farther north one.
Yes.
Is that your motion?
221.
Okay.
My only concern, and not in this individual instance, but I'm concerned we don't, we shouldn't be in a situation where somebody on the block reports it and we take their word for it that because you could have a neighbor dispute, somebody might, screw it, I don't want them out of that, call and say, there's nobody handicapped there anymore. So that is why I think if we have it, we can deal with this and then also look at the policy.
That's what I'm saying, Chris. You keep going forward with what you're doing, because it's a great idea. You keep going forward with what you're doing, but for the time being,
There may
Just
be a
take one away.
benefit for just a brief survey of the folks around there to see if there's any need, because if that's not far enough down, the Philpott has his own parking lot, that's not
Right.
far enough down for him. And is that one on the corner where the record was, is that still commercial or is that residential?
I think that's all zoned residential up there. I think the only reason the record existed before it was zoned. So they were on a non-conforming use and rezoning. But I don't even know, there ain't anything in the rail record building.
The Cornerstone Church was in there for a brief period of time, but then I think it's been empty, or people may be living there, I don't know.
We have a motion, we probably should have a second before much more discussion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? That motion is to remove from High Street the northern disabled parking spot in the area of 221 High. Any further discussion on that?
Just want to be sure it was established how? Just done by resolution or?
We can check that, but
We'd have to check
I believe
that.
they were all, at least the ones since I've been around, have all been done by resolution.
You
was
can
done
undo
for
it by
comment.
resolution. I just was wondering if it was done by ordinance, then,
No, I don't.
No, they're not, none of those are by ordinance. We have some that are established by ordinance, but
none of these are.
none of these are.
Okay, then it's fine, okay.
Probably good 10, 15, Craig.
Okay. I don't remember that particular one.
I'll put it in.
This is really bad, but this is how my brain works. For Nancy, and maybe this goes to streets, it's not necessarily related to this, but could we make like one space on each side at the interior of the square, 20-minute or less?
We don't have the manpower to enforce 2 hour, it's gonna be awfully,
Well, but people, I mean, they're gonna be less likely to park there if they know it's 20 minutes, and at 8, if they're still there, he could ticket them at 8:20.
What time does the parking kick in? Like,
8,
8 AM.
8 AM to 6 PM.
And what time's the restaurant open till?
11.
And you also have the Doyle, another restaurant on the square. And again, I don't know how long it takes to have a fancy haircut. It takes 5 minutes.
I'm with you, I'm just, if we're putting one on, like, over that way towards the restaurant, that would be 20 minutes. You could have where you're taking a spot from the restaurant then too. I'm just trying to look out and make sure we think about.
There's
what
also
that is.
15-minute parking on Cumberland on, I think, both sides of Market, right?
Not
I think that is
15
time.
or 1 hour?
That's all, I believe that's all 2 hours.
Okay. I thought the Cumberland Street parking was less.
if it's 15 minutes.
I'll say, when my wife gets a haircut, if she gets stuff, it can take time. I mean, she can be gone for a while.
Look at that, Rebecca.
It's shorter than 2 hours.
It was
No,
crazy
no,
down that race.
The sign right beside one
Store.
south is 2 hours.
But I'm thinking.
It may be
of
the
other
opposite
side.
side, I don't know.
Thinking the opposite side.
I thought it was all 2 hours.
I didn't mean to hijack the other ones, but
I'm not sure if
it
it's,
popped
if
into my
it's 20
brain.
minutes or 2 hours that's the issue. I think it's the extended parking that's the
Right,
issue.
right.
Well, but it also would, you know, if they're running in, picking up pretzels and heading back out, if they're running in, picking up flowers, heading back out, you know, they'd be in and out.
It's pretty much the same with the restaurant. I mean, there's hardly ever anyone in there longer than a half an hour.
We had a paramedic who was in there for about 4 hours every day.
And he parked the unit wherever he wanted to.
Will you indulge me one more parking question I forgot?
Sure, why not?
They're in the middle of a motion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Actually, they're in the discussion part.
Is there any further discussion on the motion?
No.
I do agree, though, that we might have to do a little bit of research before you say, we're gonna absolutely do this just from an email.
I think we should do a survey of the block or something like that, just to make sure that there's nobody that's currently using that. Especially since council had a past policy, formal or not, of leaving them there for anybody else.
Do we know if it was done on application of someone,
Yes.
and then if that someone is no longer either handicapped or no
He's
longer
deceased.
residing there, that would give.
But there's, as far as I know, there was no trigger to let us know that.
Right.
Like, we,
No, I
I
understand.
think we know Tom Evans is
That's what they
deceased.
do in these ordinances.
Right.
They say it can be removed when the applicant
Right.
is either no longer handicapped or is no longer a resident there. Which then, that gives us a paper trail, you know,
Yes.
a reason, you know. And then if there's somebody else who has a problem and needs it, then they can make their application. That's why I asked that. And that person who made that application is no longer there.
No. No.
Any further discussion on the motion?
Name would be Thomas Evans, if that helps when you're doing your research.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Mr. Kirkhoff to remove the disabled parking space in the area of 221 North High Street, leaving the one at 215 North High Street. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let's do a roll call, please.
Mr. Crothermel,
No?
Mr. Epley,
Yes,
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Nace,
Yes.
Mr. Williams,
Yes?
Mr. Kirkhoff,
Yes.
Ms. Young.
Yes.
That's
Motion
it. 6
carries.
to 1.
Thank you.
Then you'll see, we have a request from the Appalachian Trail Community Group to approve the date and time and street closure for this year's AT Festival. They want to have it on Saturday, June 17th from 10 to 4, and they're asking for the street closure to be the same as last year, between High Street between Cumberland and Plum, and from 8 o'clock till 5, which gives them time for setup and tear down. Now, Shane did say that depending what becomes of the Methodist Church, that if they are able to utilize any of that area, they may not need to go all the way to Plum Street this year. But that was their request for that. And then also, he will be coming to the Parks and Rec Committee next meeting to discuss the wine sales issue. He went down to the LCB and they gave him a different answer than what they gave us last year. But the bottom line is he wants it to be on the borough, so that's a separate issue we can discuss later, but yeah, just so that you know, that'll be coming. But, you know, in the meantime, just if we can get approval for him for the date and time.
Make a motion to give them approval.
Second.
That's for 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. from Cumberland
To
Plum to
Plum.
Yes. Who the second? Okay, motion by Mr. Williams, second by Mr. Crothermel, to approve the closure of High Street between Cumberland and Plum from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. on Saturday, June 17th, 2017 for the Duncannon Appalachian Trail Community Festival. Any further discussion? All those in favor give your consent by saying aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And then the lead water update, in addition to the testing and so forth, Greg Rogowski and I had a meeting at DEP on Friday, and it was not a very encouraging meeting. Because we have had because this is our second violation, because there was the past one, and I forget if it said 2001 or 2004, we are required to begin, we have to do a community survey to identify all lead service lines, whether they're the boroughs or the customers in the borough, and then also to begin a program of replacing 7% of those per year. If they are the boroughs, it's at the borough's expense. If they are the customer's service line, we have to offer to do the work, but they would have to pay for it. If they opt out, then they are removed from some testing protocols and things like that. And there's other requirements that they were kind of fuzzy on, but they said, you know, that would happen. Now, the replacement part of it, you know, we talked earlier about Todd's working on the new testing protocol that we have to get approved for the every 6 month with the expanded testing. If we go 2 tests in a row a year without having a violation, then we would be able to suspend that replacement project. But we're going to be required to do the first 7% in the interim while that's going on. The problem with this survey is that we do not, at least at this point, we've not been able to identify any records. We don't have property files that would tell us materials used, or have plans from homes that were built in the borough that we could identify what was used. None of our maps of the system or anything tell us where we might have you know, any lead components. We believe there may be a few goosenecks connecting the service lines to the mains. So the question for DEP in this meeting was, okay, how do we do this if we don't have any records to check? And their answer was a lot of digging.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, you know, we're waiting till we get more detail from them, but it appears that what we're going to have to do is basically dig and check every connection at the main, and then after the curb stop, Greg did ask them, what about if we could get access to the basements of these homes to look and see, you know, the line coming in? And their answer is, well, they could have changed the plumbing inside the house and still have a lead service line outside. So,
You know, after we talked the other day, Chris, one way we would know which ones not to dig would be going back over the records of repaired goosenecks in the past. Because we do, you know, I mean, that's the most common leak off of the main line is a gooseneck. And we could check that way so that, say we started at the other end of Market Street, which would be my recommendation, because especially if there's plan in the near future of repaving that, if we're gonna dig, let's tear it up before we repave it.
right.
And come down and eliminate X amount of homes, because we know we replaced that gooseneck.
Well, we will have this, you know, more for the utilities committee and you know, work with them to come up with the plan. And, you know, depending on what's involved, if we have to come back to council, I'm guessing probably financially, we're going to have to figure out something that will involve all of council. But, you know, we haven't had, in fact, Todd didn't even know this yet because I didn't have a chance to talk to him after that meeting on Friday. So, you know, we'll have to coordinate with Todd and with Pannoni and also with Mike, and, you know, take a look at coming up with, you know, at least an outline of a plan to bring the utilities committee, and then, you know, go from there and
So-
figure out how to proceed.
There's a gooseneck at every lateral?
Off your main line.
Right.
They used lead years ago because they didn't have the soft copper, which we have today. To come off the court, off the main line, there's a valve on the main line before your curb stop. They would use a lead, and it looks like a gooseneck. They bent the lead like that, you've seen them. At every resident in this town at one time was lead, gooseneck.
So we have, I think, 768 properties in the borough. And you subtract the 50, maybe?
Maybe.
that we worked on, so we're talking 700 properties we have to dig holes.
No, 7%.
7%.
No, the 7% is the
7% after
replacement.
identifying them, 7%
After we
addressed.
identify them, the 7% is the replacement.
Yeah.
So
That's a
700
possibility.
holes, 700 streets to be patched in a year, plus the repair of 7% of those 700.
May I ask a question?
That's providing it stops at, then at yours, at the
Right.
curb.
That's without.
What does the lead pipe look like in the house?
You won't, there's hardly any lead in the house. You're either gonna
Well,
find,
no, I got
you're gonna find red brass or
Coming in.
galvanized.
coming in from the street.
Brass.
That's mostly brass or
Brass.
gal, because I think mine's galvanized, but it's
Yeah.
gray and,
Yes, it's probably brass. Galvanized, it'll turn to a blackish color, and if you scrape it, you'll probably come up red brass.
okay, I think I maybe that's.
What if you know you have,
You're good,
I know that.
because you're a new home.
Bob knows he's good.
Well,
You should be good.
if it's a home built,
Almost.
you know, that we can get, if we can find records, or the homeowner has some kind of records that, you know, that probably would avoid us having to dig there.
I'll swear in a court of law what mine is. It's
Yours is
plastic,
copper.
It's black.
They put, what, it should be copper on the inside, the black, isn't it?
Black plastic, Roger.
Dear Roger Barrick, great job.
Yep,
Well-
exactly.
So could I intercede just 1 second and say, what if you assumed all, how many homes, 700 homes, were, for the sake of argument, were lead service, and you said we're gonna replace 7% of those, so you only
That's
would
what I was
look at those 7%,
Try and
you
find the
know,
most likely
in
to
that
look,
annual.
the most likely to be bad.
Oh, I see what
Find
you're saying.
those,
You know what I'm
dig up
saying?
I see what
7%
you're saying,
of
yeah.
the total amount, so
Yeah.
that if we find,
So you're only digging up in that 1 year
So
The likely
period.
ones.
so if we dig
No,
up the
we-
ones and they all are.
That was not the
So
way it
we
was
hit
explained to us.
7% of the total homes in the borough.
No, we have to first do the survey and identify all of them, then begin the replacement of 7% of those that we identify.
But isn't
But
that
what
a
she's
hard-
saying is, we assume all of them have lead, and we do 7% of them.
I just, how,
I-
doesn't it, it also includes our lines, borough lines, so it could be.
Yeah,
I don't know how you survey that without, do they want us to dig up, just dig up the every street in the town and say, look, there's all our pipes.
that was
None
pretty
of
much
your
what they
main-
said.
Your main
See,
borough
that-
lines will have lead on them.
They are.
They're either ductile or cast.
Yeah, not the lines, but the goosenecks. We know that the lines, you know, where we know we don't have lead, we don't have to
Right.
do that. It's identifying, you know, basically the service lines is what they were talking about. So that means our goosenecks and the customer's lines.
And they're gonna make us, the customer, put a new line into our house.
If it's lead.
Or
No.
there's an opt-out provision.
There's an opt-out provision
Okay.
if you choose not to.
Can the opt-out be part of the 7%?
It
I
doesn't
feel like
kind
we
of,
have to be missing, there has to be some, like, that just doesn't make sense, like, I don't know how. I mean, I know not all government operates the way you want it to, but to say dig up 730 some holes, like,
That's what I said.
well, I agree with you, but I think that their thought is that typically communities have better records of what is there, and you do the survey by searching your records. But lacking such records,
Was there any discussion about just cameraing the lines to identify, to run the cameras through the lines to identify them?
pressurized water lines, you can't camera them.
But can't we take certain, the way we have trunks in this system, can't we take certain segments offline and camera the line?
No,
to meet the 7?
you wouldn't see the lead.
No.
You would see the corp, which is brass. And the lead is on the outside of that water line. It's over here laying in the dirt. You would, if a camera went down through it, you would see each individual tap. If you were trying to locate where Chris's water tap is, say. You know, you
So the
could pick up
brass is
that
actually
corp,
what goes
yes.
into the main, and then the lead is just the.
Yes.
And additionally, if we did that, then we'd have a series of boil water advisories because you're taking the
If we
pressure
shut
out of
that
the
water
line.
down, yeah.
So,
No.
yeah, that would, I did ask that question because they all started laughing at me, said, no, it's a pressurized line, you can't run a camera in it.
But isn't the problem where the goosenecks are, not where the laterals are?
No, we have to identify both the goosenecks,
And the laterals.
but also the service line from you know, the customer's line, because
Lateral.
the customer put that in, not the borough, so we don't know what material was used there.
I
Now-
think if we go backwards, if we could identify through as-built record drawings of how particular areas were put in town and what materials were used, we could eliminate them from, let's say High Street. We know for a fact that everything went in, it was inspected, it used brass and blah, blah, blah. We can eliminate that whole street.
When?
Oh, I'm
You're
just saying.
talking
He's giving an example.
1800s.
No, he's giving an
He's giving an
example.
example. He's saying that we know that this was all.
Yes.
Yes, if we have records that show what it is, we don't need to dig.
Right.
It's where we don't have any records, and
So are they going to give us a formal letter with this in, I'm assuming?
I,
Or a summary
I,
of the meeting?
I'd have to ask Greg what the next step is. I assume that they are. I
Like,
mean,
that just could take, I mean, you can't dig right now, that could take,
I don't know
how
you
long
do
to
that. I
dig?
don't know how you could identify them in a year.
How could you even do it in a year? By then, we're done.
Yeah, right.
By then, we had two tests.
Yeah, if you maps, you could identify.
Let's just say you're
something.
down to 500.
Yeah.
How long is it gonna take you to dig 500 holes and identify?
I don't think they're gonna give us,
Right.
I think they're gonna have a time limit on that. Again, I was floored when they said this. I thought we were going there just to discuss the new booster pump because how they had threatened to stop us from lifting the boil water advisory. That was the easy part. All they said was they want us to put a mechanical limiter on so that we can't change the VFD and make it above 80 gallons a minute. And they talked about wanting us to do some more testing at the reservoir to make sure that the chlorine is equal throughout. We might have to put some kind of a mixer in there, which Greg said is not a big thing.
I think
But-
you talk to Greg and have them give you a formal letter and
Vicky,
have it
is
spelled
is
out.
Greg coming tonight? So we can maybe revisit this when Greg gets here. And maybe another option, and I don't know that this does us any good, but we've got a senator and representative with offices in Bloomfield, and this, based on what you presented, is just an insurmountable hardship.
Like, let's just say it's $300 for, and we have 500, that's $150,000.
The question, we started this meeting,
But that's, I'm just going with a very low number.
and I will tell you that the very beginning of the meeting, just in terms of our introductory talking to them, I talked to them about all the challenges that we face and that we're in the early intervention program, all the financial issues we have, that we're already facing the challenge of trying to get financing for other stuff. And Greg asked them flat out, how do we pay for that? And they said, well, Penvest is always interested in financing lead and copper programs. Well, unless they're giving us a grant, that's not solving our problem. It certainly wouldn't.
Is it less than $150,000?
Actually, the question was asked, what would happen if we did not follow through? Then we would get a consent order. If we still did not comply, then they would take us to court. And
By then, we passed two tests. I'm just saying, like, that's what I'm looking at.
well,
this and saying, like, you only
we'd be facing probably some considerable penalties, I would think.
Do we go to court at the Court of Common Pleas, or do we go to Court
Yeah,
of
but would
Commonwealth
that be
Court?
less?
I'm just saying, would that be less
I
money?
am not sure.
I'm not saying we should risk it, but if we go before a Perry County judge,
Well,
I think our outcome could be very different than a Commonwealth Court judge.
It would either be Commonwealth Court or Environmental Hearing Court.
and the ultimate stop,
Done that.
if we still did not comply, is they would turn our system over to a private operator for operation.
It's only the start, Chris, with all the other new regulations that's coming out within the next 2 years. I do not know how small municipalities are gonna survive, because you're gonna stop street sweeping.
Yeah, that's our next nightmare, is if we
Yeah.
become part of MS4. Right now, we're outside of the metropolitan area and those regulations don't apply to us, and
It's
that's,
only a matter of time.
you gotta analyze the material you're picking up on the streets, and you gotta deposit it, or dispose of it as hazardous waste if it has,
Oh, for God's sake.
petroleum and so forth in it.
We're already doing that in the county, Dauphin County.
Yeah.
And township's been in a holding pattern for a decade.
Yeah, but you look at the river and you look at the fish kills. Well, maybe we're going to.
Why don't we
maybe we're going to
come
help.
back to
One way
this
or
when
the
Greg
other.
gets
Yeah, and one of the things that Greg and I did talk about too, in fact, I was hoping on Saturday to be able to make contact, is reaching out. Penn State Harrisburg has an engineering program, and we might be able to get some interns from there to help us with this. I was hoping to see the head of the faculty senate on Saturday. I went down to their basketball game, and his son plays, but he's injured, so his dad wasn't there for the game. So I have to give Paul a call and, see if he could put us in touch. I know that when I was in Middletown, we used some of their electrical engineering students for some survey work and so forth. That was very helpful, and they were eager to do it and, get that benefit. So that's what I have at this point. The only other thing, as I was mentioned in my report, was the suggestion, and maybe Marita, if you'd want to talk a little bit about your suggestion as far as a informational meeting. And I did talk to Bill; he was going to research it, but.
Oh, sure.
For anyone that doesn't know, this is Marita Kelly. You're the deputy director or director?
I'm the Deputy Director for the Center for Local Government Services, Department of Community and Economic Development, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Welcome, Marita.
Whoa, did you say?
And Marita, just so you all know, Marita used to be the borough manager in Marysville, so she's very familiar with our community and our area, and been very helpful. She's the person who's oversees the EIP program, and so she is our friend and has been very helpful to us.
Yes, we have helped to fund the EIP 75-25%. So we're glad to be here and to be working with you with the early intervention program. We think it will be an excellent opportunity for you to have some good, solid financial advice, some 5-year financial forecasting and so forth. But you were referring to the
CDBG situation, yes.
Well, I had suggested to Christie, after talking to Mr. Siegel and some of the CDBG folks that sit right across from me, Don Enrico and Dave Arnold. Is Arnold, right? Jordan, I always want to say Arnold. Dave Jordan, sorry. And it appears to me that perhaps there's not the equal information to all 7 council members and the mayor, at least in Duncannon, and I'm guessing that perhaps that's similar with the other 2 organizations, which would be Penn Township and the Penn Township Authority. So what I suggested, that it might be an excellent idea to have an informational meeting where Mr. Siegel, DCD, Don Enrico, and Dave Jordan and myself would be present. We would, welcome the council members and, of course, Your Honor, the mayor, to that meeting and the other 2 groups. And anyone else, if Craig is president, that you'd like to invite. I guess, Bill, you and I know there are limitations on these types of meetings and whether or not they would require the open
Right.
meetings.
The closest thing that I can come that would, there's an exception for what they call a conference. An agency is authorized to participate in a conference which need not be open to the public. Deliberation of agency business may not occur at a conference.
Right, well, we
That's
don't
the problem.
anticipate any agency business or votes or considerations of votes. This would be pure information. I know Mr. Siegel's been here before. He has discussed it with some, but I don't know if you were all present. I know you're a new mayor, so you certainly would need that information for good informed decision-making. And it appeared to me that there are some other council members that might need more information, some from Mr. Siegel, some from Ms. Enrico. Donna oversees the Community Development Block Grant for our department, but of course she's under the auspices of HUD, which is the federal agency that funnels the money down to us. And there's some confusions about how not confusion, but I just think we need a little clearer information on, how CDBG works, how the particular Penn Township application has been rescinded, how do you reapply, what are the reapplication rules and risks? And our department can certainly provide some of that. But it does seem like there's a win-win here for everyone, but people need information in order to achieve that win-win, and it will come down to the solicitors, and perhaps you will even seek specific solicitors' advice on this particular issue.
Deliberations is discussion, so we have to assure that there isn't going to be discussion.
But there's actually, I don't want to be practicing without a license, but I have some experience with this because we had, where I was previously, a discussion about whether or not you need to advertise committee meetings, which we choose to do here out of prudence, but.
Well, you're required to.
Well,
you're required
there's
to.
case law that defines deliberation, and discussion is not.
Here's the definition of it in the law: the discussion of agency business held for the purpose of making a decision. The discussion.
But the discussion in this case would just be from outsiders
Right. Well,
providing
that's
data
yeah,
to
that's.
you.
I have no problem if
And
that's what
just
happens, but you sure me these guys aren't going to talk?
Oh, no, nobody would talk.
I'll buy a roll
Are
of
you
duct tape.
kidding?
That'll be my contribution.
So
But if you're not making a
advertise
decision.
it, right?
Advertise it. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I don't see the
So
harm in advertising it
Yeah.
myself,
I mean, we
but
advertise
that's
our sewer
entirely up
meetings
to
and nobody
you.
comes.
And I don't make those decisions.
And for what it's worth, I would prefer to advertise it.
I do too, I'd
So do
much rather
I.
advertise the thing.
Mr. Siegel?
If I can interject, I think you should advertise the meeting. I think we need to have the dialogue. We've had several attempts over the last year to do that. I do believe that the conference does allow some discussion, because what I've seen done in many communities is it's treated much as if you went to the Pennsylvania State Association of Boroughs meeting and you sat in a session, even though there may be a quorum of this council sitting in that meeting, you're allowed to ask questions of the presenter. And you're allowed to have those kinds of discussions. So that seems to be where this falls to whenever the question comes up in various legal settings that I've heard. Having said that, I live my life in the front page of the paper. I'm in municipal meetings doing presentations 2 nights a week. So I don't care if you want to advertise it, it's your call. But I do think, I would echo what Rita has said. I've had some conversations with Christie, I've had conversations with individuals of you different times. I've presented here different times, as well as at the township. We are at a point where discussion, education, and then ultimately a decision needs to be made. There's 2 potentials. One is the grant funds that the borough has in hand as we speak to do water system improvements. And there's the alternative that we're discussing of partnering with Penn Township, reapplying for the funds that had originally been set aside for the township project, and creating a joint system which, at least in my opinion, offers some benefits, both short-term in terms of system improvements, and long-terms, as you heard the one councilman speak to, the rules are changing, and small systems are going away. You're not going to be able to afford to do them. So the larger systems you can have, the more effective and the more efficient they're going to be long-term. So I will avail myself, I've said that repeatedly, I'll say it again tonight, I will avail myself, daytime, evening. If we need a microphone because there's 500 people, that's fine too. I don't care. But I do want to get the information out, educate the participants of the council and others so that you can make a decision.
And that's our suggestion, that knowledge is power, and the more knowledge you have, the more power you have, so the people voting can make a determination best for your
Could
community.
you or one of the other representatives from your office send to Chris a handful of dates that, trying to coordinate this?
Yes, I did tell
Do you
Dave
want it
I would
during
get
the
some
day or
dates
night?
for you. We'll send some dates to you. I don't want to monopolize but we can certainly talk to and I'll coordinate with Bill as well.
Right.
That's
Just because
okay.
there are a lot of schedules, it's certainly not going to work for everybody.
Right, well, we'll with the 4 of us, the 3 from DCD and Mr. Siegel, and then we'll send those to you, Craig, and then you can disseminate them out to yourself, Penn Township, and the Penn Township Authority.
Right,
Yes.
the PTMA. Is there any preference at the table? I assume evenings are generally better?
Unless
We
it's
can always
before
do a
7 o'clock
doodle.
in the morning.
We can always do a doodle, and, I mean, that, when
Oh,
you've
that's a
got
good
a group,
idea.
when you've got a group that size trying to coordinate schedules, you know, we can throw some Saturdays out and see if they fly, you know, and we'll go from there.
If we can start with those providing the bulk of the information.
Right.
You know,
Is
maybe.
that okay with you,
Yep.
Christie? Okay.
Well, I
then-
guess the next question becomes, is this Duncannon Borough's event inviting folks? Is this?
Well, you might not have enough room here.
I was
We
gonna
could
say
find
the
we
township
could
has
find a
more room.
place, you know, we could coordinate a place, but I guess it's not just a matter of who's hosting it, like, who's gonna be leading it?
Well, you still have to, no matter where it's at,
They are.
I want you to advertise it, and if it's, and say where it's at, if it's gonna be in Penn Township or.
Right, no, I
That's
understand
fine.
that's not, who's gonna be the guy saying, okay, we're calling to order, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that? Does everybody do their own thing? They all bring their own gavels?
No, we can.
Now, may I
They
suggest,
sit up front, we sit back there.
Yeah.
since the funding is provided by Perry County Commissioners,
That's what I was
may I
thinking.
suggest that CEDACOG or Perry County issue the invitations and facilitate the meeting?
Good idea.
That becomes neutral.
Any opposition to that? I think that works.
It's a good idea.
And I'm willing to help administratively if you need, you know, back end help,
And if it makes sense to do it, I mean, most people coming will be from Duncannon Penn Township, but if it makes sense to do it in the courtroom, in the courthouse, you know, that's certainly adequate space.
I think we find something that's local, so you don't have to run to the courthouse. And I think once we establish the date, we'll nail that down, and then each municipality and each entity can decide with the guidance of their solicitor whether to advertise or not advertise, so each entity is protected that way.
Penn Township has that
Bill,
big
do you
meeting.
want me to send you
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dates then?
Pardon?
You want me to send the dates to you from Donna and?
That'll be fine,
Okay.
that'll be
And
fine.
then I'll just copy
Great.
the board here and Penn Township.
Wishes of council, I heard discussion of Saturday, I heard discussion of evening. What's your preference? What should we be shooting at?
Can you give us maybe one or two of each?
Okay.
Okay.
I hate to be so vague, but I think that
No, that's
there's
fine.
a lot of players here and a lot of, you know, schedules.
Well, I know we have some people traveling. Dave lives in Waynesboro,
Right.
so probably an evening would be a little better for Dave because he's already in the Harrisburg region. Otherwise, he's going to travel up on a Saturday. There could be
Evenings
and
work
he's
better
traveling,
than a Saturday.
right? You're traveling as well.
I drive
Sounds like
I
you
drive
guys.
2,500 miles a month to meetings, so.
Yeah, as do I. As do I. But if you're not used to
Yeah,
it,
right,
it's,
couple
you know,
evenings.
that's what we do. That's why we were hired. But
Sounds like evenings, you know, might be a little bit better for this table. And I think generally, people in these communities generally work during the day and, you know, evenings.
Well, you get paid so well as council members, I don't know why
Yes,
it's work
right,
today.
right.
The other question I would ask is, since it's a group of you together on certain nights of the week because of council meetings, does the hour before the council meeting or wrapping up a council meeting and doing it for an hour after a council meeting?
2 a.m., how's that?
I have gotten to 1 a.m. That would be a record.
So what you're
Council
saying is we're
1
doing it in Sorrento's?
I would say probably not a council meeting night for
Yeah,
us.
Not a council meeting.
Oh, council.
Okay.
thank you. Thanks for your consideration.
No, thank you guys as well.
We're happy to help.
Can I just make a suggestion about that meeting?
Mr. Morgan?
Do we know what the outcome of that, what we want to accomplish out of the outcome of that meeting, other than just information dissemination? Because there's more than just understanding the CDBG grant funding to putting systems together that I think council is going to need access to make decisions. For example, you know, and I don't know what all your questions are, I've heard some of your concerns, because several of you have called me about your concern. Is council gonna wanna know what the status of the Penn Township system is? Is Penn Township gonna know what the status of your water system is? You know, if not, we're gonna have a meeting, and we're gonna hear about the grant funding, and you're not gonna have the information to make decisions. I think this meeting has to be more than just hearing the grant funding side. Because,
Well, you can provide data to your client anytime you'd like to, Mark.
I don't have the data, that's the problem. That's what I'm saying. I don't have Penn Township's data on the status of their system, the quality of their water. You know, I've heard you guys ask questions of me to be able to make this decision, but, you know, great, we're gonna find out, we have funding maybe to study the connection. you know, to do the engineering, to see how it gets connected, to come up with a cost, to find the funding to do that, but what are gonna be the other questions before you as a board are comfortable saying yes to that decision? What do you want, and what does Penn Township want, for that matter, before you agree to that final decision? Because I've heard all kinds of concerns from the board.
If I may weigh in, I don't think the elected bodies know what they don't know. And I think that there's a need to have dialogue to collectively have an understanding of what the options are for system upgrades. There absolutely is a need for further detail on what exists in both systems. I think the representatives will be able to provide some information in that vein. The committees that have been meeting already have some of that knowledge. I don't disagree that there will be a need for more information to investigate options and gather that information. But right now, I don't know that the boards even know they want to move forward in any kind of a partnership effort. And if there's a philosophical disagreement with partnering, then, you know, we needn't invest time and money and energy into gathering information to be shared. And I think that's the key, is are the grants enough inducement to change the way we do things historically? Can we change the paradigm of providing water service in these two communities in order to make the improvements that we have an opportunity to make? Maybe the answer is no. That decision rests with the municipal entities. Once we make that decision, then we move forward to gather the information to further answer what the options are. That's my recommendation.
Could we reply to the invitation with questions that we have and try to get the right entities to work to address those? Or is that gonna be a nightmare trying to coordinate responses from 30 people?
Questions issued ahead of time are always helpful, I think, so we can focus on those. Some of those may be of a technical nature that maybe no one has the answer to yet, but I think questions are fine. So I think that's an excellent suggestion. And what we'll do is, as we assemble the date and issue the invitation, we'll issue the list of questions. Do you think it's feasible to include resources like the borough and Penn Township's engineers, the people who know the ins and outs of the water system, to that same meeting, or are we talking about just extending it too long? Because honestly, I hear what you're saying, and I think the flip side of that is that it's not necessarily just a philosophical disagreement partnering. We also need to know what the potential improvements are and what the pitfalls in that are before we can even make a decision on that. The only comment I would offer to that is, bear in mind that both municipalities have had their engineers submit to the county and included in the applications to DCED what the improvements are they need to make to their projects. They have, you as a community and Penn Township as a community have both, through the assistance of your individual engineers, prioritized your projects.
But
Those are our own projects.
I was gonna say, that those submissions were not based on interconnection.
Right.
And the interconnection, like I've heard, I think Mr. Kirkhoff indicated, we may be able to get rid of the reservoir. We may not need to drill a well, so it changes.
It does change
the
the
path
path,
to get to
it does change it, but unfortunately, it doesn't change it in a way that you can sit in a meeting and answer those kind of questions.
No, you
That's the information that Mark just said you need, but we're gonna have to spend money to get there. We can pay for that with the CDBG funds, but we can't pay for that with the CDBG funds and then decide not to do a project.
Right.
The engineering is eligible as part of the project.
But-
But your engineers, and I agree with you, Darrell, if your engineers are there, our engineer knows our system, their engineer knows their system. You ask a question one time.
We're not saying we can't be, we're just
Right.
saying that
Right,
main
right.
people.
You ask a question about arsenic, in their water.
And manganese,
Their
yeah.
engineer's gonna know
Right.
what's in their water. So a question about those kinds of things. Yeah, the interconnection, the engineers are gonna have to sit down together and decide
And
whether it will.
Any
go
engineer
together.
can be hired for the project, right? That's chosen by the
Correct.
parties, so they could,
We have to advertise
Right.
and hire the engineer competitively.
But in order to get, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm just in left field. In order to get CDBG funding for this project, you have to commit to join the system. I don't know how you join the system.
Excuse me, that's only half correct. It's only half correct, and I'm interrupting you because
No, that's okay.
there's
go
a
ahead.
lot of misinformation, and I want it to be clear. Duncannon Borough, as you sit here this evening, you have in hand contracts for community development block grant money to upgrade your system in the amount of $881,700. Perry County has applied for the funds, and they have provided those to you, and you have contracts for those. That includes system improvements for Duncannon Borough. And the system improvements that were designed or called out by your engineer, it was a $1,050,000 project that included well improvement, a new well, booster station with generator, a 12-inch main from the standpipe down Chestnut Street to High Street. That project is in hand. You don't have to do anything different. You can make the decision you want to do that project. We can move that project forward starting tomorrow morning. The question at hand is, about a year before your money was awarded, Penn Township was awarded a grant which they lost because they were not able to document low and moderate income benefit because of a change in the service area. DCED has expressed an interest, if the systems are joined, to revisit that funding. Now, they can't give us a formal commitment until we reapply, but they've effectively said,
Reapply all the way up to HUD.
no,
Yeah.
no. It's a competitive grant at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So DCED makes the decisions for the
We were
competitive.
told they were gone.
Pardon?
When we met with Dave, he said the money's gone. There is no money to apply
The
for.
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania gets an allocation of community development block grant funds from HUD annually. Under Pennsylvania Act 179, 13% of the funds that are received by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania under the CDBG program from HUD are set aside for a statewide competitive program. Penn Township is an eligible applicant for that, and that's how they got funded before. Those monies from federal fiscal year 2014 were surrendered, and what they would do is they would reapply for federal fiscal year 2016 funds.
Right.
It's an annual allocation.
Right.
So they don't have to apply to HUD, they apply to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it comes out of under Act 179. So back to my point, the key here is that there is an opportunity, if the systems are joined, to leverage additional funds which will benefit both communities. But, to be perfectly clear, and I've said this at a number of your meetings, and I'll say it again, to be perfectly clear, we are only having the discussions about the partnership because when this was funded originally for Duncannon, CEDACOG came and we asked the question. And at that time, there was interest in investigating, partnering with Penn Township and recapturing those funds. You have the authority at this meeting, if you choose to do so, to decide to abandon that effort. And my responsibility serving Perry County is to serve you in carrying out your project, and it is already funded.
Bill, did you say, though, that if we got funding for the engineering, you'd have to commit to the project?
The way the CDBG program works is engineering is not an eligible activity standing alone.
It says,
But you can fund engineering if it is part of a construction project. So
well,
what we have to be very careful of is if you choose to use the CDBG funds to do engineering work, and then you elect not to build the project, the CDBG funds would have to be returned.
here is my concern, is that I don't know how anybody decides to proceed with the project without having any idea what it's going to cost. Connecting the two systems getting the water from that well to the standpipe might cost more than the combined grant, even if Penn Township gets their money back. I mean, without that information, that, we could end up spending all that money for a pipe to connect the two systems and no money to improve the systems. How do we, is there money somewhere for that, a feasibility study or engineering to give us at least some rough idea how we're going to do that and what it's gonna cost to make that connection? I love the idea. I mean, that was the first meeting I went to when I was appointed, was up at Penn Township talking about this idea. And you're absolutely right, it's a win-win if we can make it work, but.
In my opinion, in order to do a very preliminary assessment of the interconnection, I don't think you're talking tremendous amount of engineering design work to do a preliminary assessment of that. Both communities had earmarked monies for engineering services. So what we could potentially do is use a portion of the money both communities earmarked for engineering services, and then use the CDBG funds to pay for the engineering services the communities were going to pay for. So we're simply swapping money between projects. There is, I believe, a relatively simple assessment of the existing engineers, both Penn Township and Duncannon, who have a sense of what the project involves, who know the systems, and probably in a very minimal cost, if any, could make a determination of the realistic of interconnect.
They ought to be able to do that. They know both systems. They should.
So I don't think it's a huge undertaking. The design is a huge undertaking. If the decision is it can be done, it's affordable, it makes sense, the design is a whole different story.
Greg and Vicki, you guys are here. What would it take to determine a rough idea, cost-wise, of what it would take to connect them?
I think to be conservative, to get an answer that you would, because you would be relying on that answer then to move forward, and that would be my fear. So we would need to take that a little bit beyond just a feasibility study. We would need to do some additional analysis that you're talking about $10,000 to $15,000.
Have you looked at Penn Township's engineering?
No, I know very little about Penn Township's situation status, whatever. So
Theirs was all engineered out. It's all there.
But not a connection between
No,
the
the
two.
connections, the only connection is two pipes that are as close together.
I use that as an example of what feasibility study has been done.
Yeah, I mean,
These two are really close on
I'm
the
still
map.
not too sure how, I get hung up in the engineering cost, 10 grand just to connect two systems.
That's not to connect, that's just to.
That's just.
Well, no,
That's not to build
the
the system.
engineering,
Right.
just to these, yes, I understand. We got a pipe here, we got a pipe here.
And I guess my response is $10,000 to $15,000 doesn't shock me as an engineering
Well,
analysis to do that.
Right.
That's better than I thought it was going to be.
But the reality
We'll
is,
make it 25!
This is not option work, Greg.
but the reality is, if you're looking at a potential $1.5 million or $2 million system upgrade, is it worth investing $10,000 to $15,000 to make the assessment of does that? I think, to me, the process is pretty simple. Philosophically, are you prepared, both communities, to have a shift in paradigm for how to run the system? Second question, if so, what is the feasibility of interconnecting the systems? If so, how do we move forward to bring an engineer on board to design the interconnection, and how do we all benefit equally? To me, that's the process for the decision making. There needs to be education done before that.
Can we
That's what we're
go
talking
back to the shift of paradigm discussion? So what does that mean? We interconnect these systems. What has to happen? Legally? Fiscally?
That's not black and white. That gets to be defined.
Give me gray. I'm good with gray.
There's a range. I don't want to use the word simplest because it's probably not the simplest, but in the most simple response to that question is the creation of a joint municipal authority, where each municipality passes an ordinance and creates an authority. There's representation from both, and I can tell you, and having done this in many communities, the early years, you're very worried about having the right representation, and 2 years down the road, it's our system, not their system and my system. But the formation of a joint municipal authority is one way. Another way is a cooperation agreement between the parties that talk about how the system will be operated and managed and maintained and operated. And I think you already do that with respect to sewerage.
Our intermunicipal agreement.
So, you know, those are the two traditional means by which this is done. And there are pros and cons to both, and the solicitors for the communities will outline those pros and cons. I will be happy to share with you where I've seen that work and not work, and how I've seen it work and not work, and what seems to work better and sometimes than others. But it amounts to some kind of a formalized relationship, contractual, or creation of a municipal authority, and the interconnection and sharing of benefits between the systems.
Bill, I have a question. Could a memorandum of understanding be adequate, or would that be more significant than that?
I guess my take on a memorandum of understanding is it's another version of an agreement, so it probably could be, but I would defer to the legal counsel on that.
In all discussions that we'd had previously with you, me and Bob, with Penn Township, the intermunicipal agreement was the,
Yeah, because of the issuance of debt, pro rata of debt service funding, all those kind of things.
that was our preferred option due to our familiarity with that type of.
Because that's what we have in place for sewage.
And it works really well with, between the sewer authority and the municipal authority out there, we work together well.
And my guess is, if I had to guess, 3 years down the road, you'll look at that and say, gee, why isn't that an authority? And that's fine. I've seen many communities do that, and they still have the agreement
And they
So-
could become an authority too.
at any time.
So the connection is between Duncannon Borough and Penn Township at Sunshine Hills right now, but it would cover all of the lines everywhere. Like whatever the water authority comes together is, or whatever that agency is, covers everything. Because I think there's some concern with the business park and what's happening out there, and spreading that debt into this community to front that if we're all one.
And those are the kind of concerns that you hammer out at the front end of the process. Those are the kind of things you resolve. So if there are those, think of it as a marriage.
I was hoping you were going to do your analogy.
Think of it
I
as a marriage.
appreciated that.
This isn't visitation, this isn't who's got the kids what weekend. We're talking marriage.
Not a one-night stand.
It's not a one-night stand. So, you know, that really is, it is a change in paradigm.
Currently, and I don't know if anyone knows this, you guys may know this for sure, Penn Township has a couple water systems. They're not all connected, correct? Sunshine Hill is its own,
They own one.
that's the only, Sunshine Hill's the only one? So the one at the business park isn't Penn Township?
It's privately owned.
And Sunshine Hills is no longer interconnected, correct?
Interconnected to,
Penn Township. Sunshine Hills isn't that the apartment complex?
No,
that's,
I'm sorry, I got them mixed up.
Sunshine Hill's the one that Penn Township.
Okay, that is the Penn Township.
That is, yes.
Okay, thank you.
There was talk of connecting the apartments, I guess, over off West
Susie
Woodshop Road.
Hammaker's.
That's it.
Fountain.
Fountain.
Yeah, it's
and they
Sunshine
opted
Hill.
out of that, which is the whole reason we're here where we are.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
they got their own system.
Well, we could all join together if everybody would be happy enough to do that.
About 8 or 10 years ago, the property manager for PMI, Phelps Reynolds, came to this meeting, sat right over there, and asked for water. Michelle Cooper was her name.
I know her.
She asked for water, and she said she Phelps Reynolds wants water.
That
And
is
the answer
what,
from this table was, we don't have the water to give you,
that is what drove the Penn Township CDBG application.
because they wanted water.
Because they wanted water, and they were signed on as a partner in that project. And after the project
had
was
the low mod.
funded,
They had the low mod, exactly.
after the project was funded, they withdrew.
Right.
So that's why Penn Township
Do they now have their own system? Is that?
Yes.
DEP required them to develop their own supply.
Yep.
I don't know if it was done or not.
So
Yes, it was. They had
So-
new wells and stuff.
DEP prompted Phelps Reynolds to pull out of the CDBG.
No, I would say to the contrary. DEP actually negotiated with the Faust departments to stay in,
Okay.
as did DCED and CEDACOG. The issue was, the False departments felt, as I recall, that by tying in on a publicly funded project, it would be more expensive than their engineer felt it would be if they privately developed their own well. And secondly, by tying in, they lost control of the user fee, but by building their own system, they had total control of that cost. Those, I believe, were the two reasons that the owners shared with me in conversations that I had with them.
Yep.
So we're going to have a informational session, date to be determined, advertised appropriately. Is that where we are? Preferably, it sounds like in an evening. So I'll get dates, or Bill will get dates and coordinate with Marita, and we'll see.
And I'll make sure you get them as well, Craig, just as
Thank you.
courtesy.
And I would guess that we're looking probably 3-4 weeks out in order to get, and in my evenings, we're looking about 2 weeks out.
Do we have anything else for tonight regarding this? Okay.
Was there anything else you needed from us at this point? Or we've got our action plan and we're good?
I think we have an action plan. I will share with you that DCED is beginning to become somewhat nervous about the delays in moving forward. What I'm watching is to make sure that you don't jeopardize the grant you have in hand.
Because you're 1 year in
Nobody was
already.
nervous.
Right.
Okay, so we have technically 3 years to be into construction, 5 years the contract expires. I don't want to lose more than another few months making final decisions, because one of the things I pledged,
And you stressed that, in fairness, you stressed that since the beginning.
and I've pledged to this council that you're pausing to investigate this opportunity, if that's the right term, will not jeopardize your funds. So my obligation to you is to keep that in front of you.
Bill,
And
do you,
the only other question is, do you want any of your technical experts to be present? I mean, they can be invited. Do you want them as speakers, just like this gentleman in front of me, with the fine jacket?
He'll be there, he's chairman of the.
I was just saying, we keep saying the three, we should have the sewer authority, I guess, as the fourth body that would be invited.
Let's invite all the 4 bodies, and let's leave it up to them if they want to invite their engineers or not, because it's gonna be a cost, each of them.
Right.
But also it's a wealth of information
Absolutely.
that could help benefit them too.
And
And maybe they can bring something to the table.
I think
Mark,
if-
you're certainly invited if you'd like to join.
I think Mark is someone I would want to engage, our solicitor is someone I would want to engage, and our engineering firm is someone our group I would want to engage. And then the
Absolutely.
4 entities being invited are the Duncannon Borough Council, Penn Township Supervisors, Penn Township Municipal Authority, and the Duncannon Sewer Authority, Duncannon Municipal Authority.
My point earlier, though, is you can always seek advice from Mark and all these other
Certainly.
individuals separately as council
I-
members. That was my only point in my earlier
And
conversation.
I've done
wasn't trying to
that,
be
Mark and I have
rude,
had a variety
you
of
know,
discussions,
So,
and
you
there's,
know, however you wish to seek information otherwise, but we just thought if we bring all the folks to the table, we can ask the appropriate individuals, and then nobody's in a guessing game, and
Right.
we drive for that win-win, because this is a great community. My husband said this should have been a national park, it's so beautiful, this whole region. I live in Middle Paxton, but it's just so beautiful.
so you look at us from their side of the river.
Yeah, so any rate, you know, there's a lot of wealth, and there's a lot of great things, and if we can find a win-win, that would be ideal. And again, it's ultimately your decision, it's ultimately their decision, well, ultimately your decision on this issue.
And I think that's been my personal assertion since the beginning, is that if we can, you know, it's one community, and certainly what happens in Penn affects Duncannon, that happens in Duncannon affects Penn. And if we can work together and do something that's gonna benefit everybody, it makes sense. But I just think, like Bill said, there's a lot that I don't know, I believe. So I'm trying to understand this as best I
Well, if we
can,
can bring
to make an
the
informed
information
decision.
to you and everybody at the table, because we've met before, and we didn't have Bill involved, and we met with Dave, right? And then we're like, well, why do you have some questions for Bill? And then Bill has answered questions for Christie and I multiple times, he's probably tired of answering questions for me. And, you know, so if we have everybody at the table at the same place, at the same, you know, level playing field, I think you have a better.
And it sounds like I would consider the three of you experts to some degree in various portions of this project, and it sounds like there's even some discrepancy on how some of these processes work with applying the HUD with, you know, some various items, and, you know, you're the experts, we're not, so I think that there's a lot of information that's either not clear or has changed or is
We just need
maybe case dependent.
clarification on it.
Right.
One final point of clarification in terms of the invitees, recognize that Penn Township supervisors really don't have a dog in the race.
Yeah.
They,
Well, does Duncannon's municipal
Well-
authority either?
well, I don't know that, but what I can tell you about Penn Township is they've formed a formal authority and turned all of that system over to that authority. So the authority is actually the designated entity that owns and operates and makes the decisions about the Penn Township water system. We should still invite the supervisors.
I agree.
I wouldn't exclude them, but I don't want anybody to misunderstand if the Penn Township supervisors say, well, we're not coming. It's not because they weren't interested, it's really, it's not their game.
Well, I attend most of the Penn Township meetings, probably 10 of the 12 each year, and probably 3 of those 10, there's concerns or statements or questions about the water system posed to the supervisors. Either people that don't understand or don't know how that works, so they're aware there's some problems up on the hill.
Sure.
Well, thank you for tolerating my recommendation.
No, thank you, I appreciate the input from our experts.
Thank you.
Greg, do you have anything to contribute?
No, I think the only thing I would suggest is if we are gonna set something up a couple of weeks out, that you would at least authorize us, you know, not the $10,000 effort, but a couple $100 effort to sit down with the Penn, just one meeting with the engineer. You know, we can have our little steel cage match, you know, at that point in time and just figure things out so that we're presenting a kind of a unified
I think that's a great
message,
idea.
whether it's good or bad. You know, I think as technical experts, we have the responsibility to present that information whenever it shakes out.
Would you do that ahead of time? Is that your proposal?
Yeah, that we would be prepared for the meeting, you know, in some.
We're good, that's very
A
good.
couple $100? City Cog will pay up to
See, I knew he
$500
could do it for less.
City Cog will pay up to $500 to the 2 engineers to sit down and do that.
Directly, so you don't have to come through us?
We'll pay directly to the engineer.
Is Anoni okay with that?
We're fine.
Okay, done.
And you'll
Pete's gift card.
You'll coordinate. Then maybe what I have to use, that's a whole separate discussion.
My only other comment or question, just for ease of you guys and maybe, is who has to be there for the conversation? There's the nice to haves, you know, and then there's the ones that really probably can't move forward without. Obviously, you folks are one set. I think the engineers or a representative from the engineers would be another set. Is there anyone else that has to be represented in order for this thing to move forward?
Ultimately, the decision is going to rest in this room around the table I'm facing. So it's up to you how you define the have to. Because right now, you have the grant to move forward with your own improvements. So it really is under your control. And then secondly, obviously, the Penn Township Municipal Authority has to choose to partner as well. But really, you have all the power because you actually are holding a grant in hand today to make the improvements in your community.
Bill, in reference to that, is Dan Green still on your staff?
Dan Green is not.
That explains why I had sent him an email because I was looking for an update. The last I had heard from him, back right after I came here last February, was that they were proceeding with the environmental and historical studies. And I was looking, I'm assuming that we kind of put those on hold till this gets sorted out, since it may not
I'd have to
include
check
that.
on the status of those. Once we start them, we often just go ahead and wrap them up at our risk. But Dan Green's emails should have all come to me. They were all theoretically being forwarded by my department, by my agency to me. But I didn't see that email, so it may have gotten caught up in our
I just wondered, because if this doesn't go through, we need to, as you mentioned, with the timeliness of the grant, you know, make sure that we're prepared to follow through with our and so that we don't lose the money, and that's why I was concerned. It seemed to be a long time to get the results of that, and I don't know what the timetable is, I have no idea.
You don't need to be worried about the results of the environmental review. We'll get the clearance. If we don't already have it, we will obtain the environmental clearance. That process is about a 90-day process, unless you run into an archaeological issue. But I'm not too concerned about that. The bottom line is, I believe that we have another 3 or 4 months to have the kind of dialogue we're having and not jeopardize your funding.
Now, but that kind of concerns me when you tell me it usually takes 90 days, because 90 days after I had that, exchange with Mr. Green was well before there was any of this talk, before we had authorized our representatives to be meeting with you in the township about the joint project. 90 days would have been up by, well before that.
But I don't understand what your question is.
Well, I was told in February that was what was going on now, the environmental study and any historical study that needed to be done.
Right.
And if it only takes 90 days to complete, we never heard anything. I mean, theoretically, not that I'm glad we didn't, because this is a possibility.
You wouldn't necessarily hear it, because CEDACOG does the review and the county is the certifying officer for the process. So
But how would we have known to have the go-ahead if we'd have decided to put shovels in the dirt this summer?
No, it doesn't, and that's why we've never gotten into this level of discussion, but the way the CDBG grant works is you don't get the money dropped into your account and you start to put shovels in the ground. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you choose to look at it, you have a relationship with the county by way of CEDACOG, and we come with the money. So if you make the election, you're going to move forward with the project here in Duncannon, then we will work hand in hand with you and the council to develop the request for proposals for engineering, to do the environmental review, to assist you in retaining the engineer. If you're going to use your local funds, we can bypass those steps. We'll work hand in hand with your engineer.
And I understand that. My point is, I'm a little concerned that we didn't hear anything way back then before we even started talking about, the formal talks about the joint idea. I mean,
I don't understand what you were looking to hear. What is it you expected to hear? Help me understand that.
What you just said, that we'd be starting we never heard anything about starting the engineering process and all that you talked about.
Right, because the direction we had from council was you wanted to investigate the partnership with Penn Township
But
first.
that came after that well past the 90 days from when I talked to Dan. I'm just wondering about the timing, that's all.
He's worried about environmental, whether they did an environmental study, and he didn't get the paperwork.
No,
They don't do the environmental study. CEDACOG does that, and Perry County does that on their behalf. I can't tell you, Chris, if we.
This might have been something with Dan. We can talk offline. It's not an issue here. I'm curious about the process.
I'll be happy. Give me a call. I'll walk you through the process step by step.
Thank you.
Anything else for the manager?
I get it.
Chris, anything else?
I'm finished.
Anything from the table for the manager?
Unless we want, now that Greg's here, if you have questions about the lead situation and that.
It's not good. We shed some tears before you got here.
Yes.
Your meeting on Friday, in reference to the lead survey.
Correct.
Chris shared some information that we're hoping is wrong.
I would love to be wrong.
That DEP was not forgiving about our proposal. We've got 768 properties in the borough, and we have to survey 768 properties unless we can confirm that we have records that they're not lead goosenecks or lead laterals.
That is correct, and unfortunately, our conversations with Sean Cable, he was even unwilling to take the step of looking, say, for example, in the basement, to confirm that the pipe coming through the wall, would give us some indication of those situations. So, I think it was very clear that he wanted us to dig, put a visual inspection on these services. Now, that would mean soft digging or something like that, small hole, test holes. If you even know where some of these are, I think that would be a challenge in itself. That's what they're looking for by the end of the count. It was 1 year since they had the bad lead hit, so it would be October-ish of this year. So yes, I mean, do I think that we can have some further conversation with him. I'm hoping we can. Sean's been reasonable with my conversations with him in the past. But he almost seemed to be, this seemed to be new to him as well, and I was a little bit surprised by that was the answer. So I think there's a little bit more to be investigated there, but I think the statement to us was clear.
It's frankly frightening.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, Jeff said, what, $150,000?
That was just, I was saying, let's dig 500 holes, let's say we're throwing some out and dig 500 holes at $300 now.
And that's not
exponentially, you start.
That's a vac truck for an hour is $300. I mean, that's pretty close. So, you know, you are definitely talking about that type of investment and trying to figure what's out here.
And that $150,000, we'll use that just as a possible number. I wish Jim Ryan was here. Only gets us the information. It doesn't replace those goosenecks. It doesn't replace those laterals.
It doesn't even start. Now, if you look at a practical perspective of this, the only way to eliminate lead from the system would be to replace everything, because you're never going to find everything that's out there, every single source. I would think that just from what I know of the borough, that there are probably sections of town that we would be okay. But at the same time, you know, I'm sure there are sections of town that we would not be okay. So with that in mind, you're only digging a hole that's this big as well. You know, I mean, you're trying to make some determinations on holes that are that size, and that's where my pushback would be to DEP, that even though we're digging a hole, yeah, we'd be able to see lead, for example, if that was the situation right there. But there's situations, there's copper scenarios that have leaded solder in them. You would see copper, but you wouldn't know it was leaded. So to eliminate the entire process is almost impossible without replacing, you know, the services.
That's kind of where we got to with the two.
Well, and you know, the conversation I believe that you were having probably was related to why don't we just start replacing the services instead, or you know, going down that road.
Well, one of the suggestions at the table was, what if, I'm trying to say this right, what if we assume we have, you know, we eliminate the ones that we know aren't an issue, and we say we have, say, just a round number, 700 left, and we do 7% of those.
Well, yeah, maybe you identify 10%, but we think these are the ones where we're most likely to find lead. Let's just go in, dig those ones up, replace them.
I think if we didn't even explore the option if you were to just commit up front to replacing 7% of your services every year. Yeah, I think there would be certainly.
We're not saying every year. We're just saying until.
Until October.
Yeah,
So you're back in compliance.
Am I
2 years worth of 6 month test, right?
I thought it was 2 consecutive tests to test every 6 months, so it would be a year to where it.
Right. I believe that the way it was explained to me is that we were obligated because of this second issue that we've had, that material survey had to be completed within 1 year of the bad hit, irregardless of what happens anywhere else. Because part of that material survey is to confirm that we are sampling at points with known lead.
I guess what we discussed is not necessarily doing the material survey, but doing replacement, knowing here's the gross number of connections we have. If we replace 7% of them, or 10%, or whatever that number is, we know that we've exceeded what would have been the result of the material survey. Does that make sense?
I understand. I understand.
But that didn't seem like that.
We did not get into any of those scenarios, but we can certainly explore those and see what.
Again, I don't know if that.
I'm just saying, let's first, we would probably identify like 7%, and let's check all those and replace the ones that are bad. Then if we don't hit 7%, then we identify a couple more, and we
But
keep.
if we replace 7% of the total gross, then we've done at least 7% of
What we could have found. We like the worst we could find is that everything outside of the ones we know have lead.
But it doesn't accomplish the material survey.
But the question came up, do we actually have to do the survey if we were just to say, we'll concede?
That we didn't get into that, so that's the question that I believe is the biggest one.
Right.
And clearly, if we get the pH under control, which has to do with the corrosion control study, then we don't even have to do the 7% this year. But like you said, they still wanted the material survey this year to be done anyway. So I think if we were to try to present those in some different forums and see what we could get out of them, once again, I thought Sean was reasonable in conversations I've had with him. You know, I think some of the other.
Even if we commit, it doesn't even seem feasible to do the material study in a year.
Even if we were rich.
It's Flint, Michigan. I mean, you know, everybody hears that, but that's exactly what it is. It's the same situation, scattered everywhere. Just Flint got the headline. I mean, it's out there.
I bet there's thousands of towns like that. I'm sure.
If you Google, you'll see Lancaster County is
Yeah.
worse than Flint, according to the news stories.
And Flint, if if I understood, was they had lead mains.
They had all kinds of lead.
Right.
I mean,
We don't believe we have any lead mains in the street.
Yeah, but they changed their water, and the chemicals in the new water caused the lead to leach out of the pipes, because they changed their water
So there are
source.
more effective corrosion control chemicals out there that are more expensive, but, you know, I don't know what the number is off the top of my head. I'm sure that if you invest in those chemicals, you are gonna pay yourself back by not having to replace lead services, so, you know, that's what needs to be done at this point, is go through that corrosion control study and figure out what else is out there. I have a sneaking suspicion that will also solve your problems as well too, with some of the caustic clogging with that. So all of that comes together to hopefully resolve that issue, put the brakes on the 7% replacement, and then the only thing that's out there is, well, hey, what do we, you know, what's in our obligation with respect to this material survey?
Are you saying that the meeting you had with DEP is the final say, or do you think you
No,
can have
no,
another
it was an initial, I mean, it really, the meeting wasn't even about lead and copper. That's just where we got to in the conversation, so yeah. I think
Negotiate, just saying, we'll
We-
find 1%, replace 1% without even, yeah, I mean, maybe there's room for some sort of negotiation. Like, I wouldn't have a problem, like, we'll replace some to,
Yeah.
Well,
and
we
barring,
have sat in on those meetings with you about
barring
costs
two
and
tests being
expenses
bad.
from the early
get to a
intervention
good spot.
program standpoint. We did that with Shenandoah Borough, just so you know. So we have sat in on those, and we're another state agency, so at least we can, sit down with you if you'd like and
Greg, do you know
explain
Rita?
that the cost is, yeah, we've met with them.
Okay.
But the cost can be, very cost prohibitive, and, we want to do the right thing, but we have to do it, and, Mark can join us, if that helps.
We didn't even get, like I said,
It doesn't hurt to have some, at least some folks at the table that look at, the realism of being able to afford a certain amount of money in a given year in terms of the health, safety, and overall health, safety, and welfare of the community.
Well, on the sewage side right now, it's been beat to death at these meetings, but we can't afford to get out of violation right now on the sewage side, is where we stand. I mean, we can't do financing because we don't have audits, and our EIP is approaching being done, and that's a big first step. But, we can't even come into compliance because we can't afford to on the sewage side right now. So now we have the water stuff stacked on top of that.
Well, we have the same thing in Shenandoah, trust me.
Well, and we're probably looking at an 18% sewer rate increase next year based on projections.
I'm not surprised. Please keep us apprised of your dialogue with the DEP guy.
we will. And like I said, it's kind of just opened up to us at this meeting, so we really haven't had a chance, I mean, we're absorbing it.
So were we, it was scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought we were going to talk about a pump.
Chris has my contact information.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I do think there's more to come with respect to that, so.
Do you have anything else you'd like to let us know this evening?
No, I can, I seem to be the bearer of bad news all the time.
Chris already did, he beat you to it before he got here. All right, anything else for the manager, from the manager? You all right, Frank?
I'm ready.
Okay. We'll move on to number 9 then, the treasurer's report. We have the weekly banking review, which we're going to replace setting tonight. Any questions or wish for action on the banking review? We've also got the checks register with you next.
You go.
Any wish for action on the banking review?
Find a way to move the one.
Make a motion to accept the treasurer's report subject to audit.
Motion by Ms. Young, a second by Mr. Croft-Arnold to accept the banking review as treasurer's report, subject to audit. Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, the ratification and approval of bills. You have the check register document dated 1/17. Any questions or discussion or action on the bills?
Motion to pay.
And ratify?
Yes.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Williams, a second by Ms. Young, to approve and ratify the bills as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor give consent by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Move then.
Mr. President, can I call for a break?
Let's take a 7-minute break.
That works,
Come back at 9:35.
so he can stretch. Thank you.
He's asking. Okay.
You're either gonna have to get smaller council people or chair and.
We'll bring the meeting back to order at 9:38-ish.
We'll go with that.
Before we move into the standing council committees, I had asked, I think in November or December, if anyone had any input or ideas or thoughts on any realignment of the committees. I heard from Mr. Adams and Christie, or Ms. Young, as far as some ideas, some thoughts and suggestions. I didn't hear from anybody else. I put some yellow on the document I distributed to you because I could not remember who the citizen members were on all the committees. It's not on the website. I had made notes at some point, and I don't know where my notes are. I know there were citizen members on the utilities committee, and I can't remember if they were on the streets and infrastructure or police facilities. And I think I got the Parks and Rec people right. I had both Clivers, but I believe it's only Amy, and I forgot Margie South.
I think I printed it out today. Do you want me to go?
Yes, that'd be great.
I
Mike Wolford,
thought I had
that's what he was saying, we think Mike Wolford was on utilities.
Now that you say that, that is correct.
Streets, I had an interested party, I haven't, he was supposed to come to a meeting, so I could get, before, I didn't wanna just say, let's put him on until we knew.
Right.
I didn't know who it was, so.
Are there any other citizen members on the committees on this?
We were gonna we were gonna do that anyhow, so.
Okay.
I just wanna make sure we don't miss anybody that should be there. I know we had Ryan, Lisa, and Sharon on the streets, or the revitalization development. Tanya, Margie, and Amy on Parks and Rec. Fleet and facilities, did you have any citizen members on yours, Frank? Not. Okay. Streets infrastructure, just maybe one pending.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to
Okay.
meet him.
The other thing I did is, if you recall, at the beginning of the year when we assigned committees, Mr. Leonard had indicated he wanted to participate in 4 committees, whereas before most members have participated in 2 or 3. So now we have it that I believe everybody's on 3, chairing 1 and members of 2 others. Also, Mr. Capuano, you're encouraged to attend any and all of them. I specifically listed you on communication finance administration because you were on that previously as a citizen member, and then also on public safety, because we always have the mayor on the public safety committee. Are there any others that you'd like to formally be a part of? Please let us know. I want to make sure we publish those full lists with the committees. With Roger's involvement and interest and certainly expertise and background, and the critical nature of utilities, I have Roger as chair of utilities, and then Christopher Adams, Mr. Adams as chair of Parks and Recreation.
I'd like not to give up Parks and Rec.
Okay.
I mean, I stay on utilities and I would help the young man, which I stressed to him last month. I would do that with him.
My concern was, as the new guy, utilities are very volatile, a lot going on there. And I feel like, I want to keep you on Parks and Rec, and I have it noted there that way. But as far as chairing the committee, I think, keeping you and Jeffrey on the utilities, I think is important. And Christie's
I thought, we talked about before, putting utilities into streets and infrastructure, but.
And just eliminating that?
We don't do much, we haven't done much with that committee, because most of what gets talked about has been, we've talked about some with the lighting there, but other than that, the sewer and water stuff is all.
I'm not opposed to.
That's what we had talked about whenever Ron at first said that he didn't want to continue, that it may be beneficial to just.
No, a lot of the utility stuff is infrastructure anyhow.
That's what we've had that conversation in the meetings, we end up talking about them, we end up talking about both things at both meetings because they all both deal with each other.
Okay.
So, because we talked about whether utilities is infrastructure, like, is the utilities just the billing and the infrastructure part is infrastructure?
And that's a fair statement.
I don't know the answer.
Roger, are you opposed to not chairing the committee if we combine and keep Jeff as the chair of streets, infrastructure, utilities?
Well, maybe Chris could take revitalization.
Yep,
Oh,
that's what I was gonna suggest.
Yeah, because that's,
Chris, we're just gonna talk about you like you're not here, if
I
that's
don't
all
know how
right.
you feel about that, but that committee is, I don't feel like anybody runs that meeting. we
It's
kind of,
been such a mix because there's been so many that I haven't been able to
we'll
make.
have,
and several
there's been
weeks
meetings
haven't
when
been
he's
able
not
to make,
there,
so-
either me or Christie's run it, so having someone that is solely on that one would be.
Yeah.
It would save us
Is that-
it would save us re-advertising the meetings since we need to change them if Darrell stays.
So if we make streets infrastructure, add utilities to that, keep Jeffrey as chair, and Christie and Roger as members,
That's fine.
And then change Roger to chair of Parks and Rec.
are you good with that, Chris?
Yes. Are you good with chairing revitalization? Yes. All right.
And
That's a
do
good
you
meeting.
want to
That's-
step back from revitalization?
I'm good with that.
I was trying to, like, it's like Parks and Rec, for instance, Roger, having been on Parks and Rec and have such interest, I want to keep him on that committee, you know, to participate.
You gonna move Wolfie down to there too?
Yes, yeah, I would want to get the council members
Okay.
lined up first.
All right.
Was there somebody else, was Grogan on that committee, or just the authority?
Just the authority.
He's come to that meeting.
Yes.
And
Well,
in my mind,
He did
no,
actually,
no.
I don't think he actually did.
in my mind, I think anyone can come to the meeting, I just, you know,
Right.
people have a vested interest, they want to.
No, he hasn't come because we had sunshine law considerations
Oh,
with sewer,
because of-
so he did not come to that.
You still will with Michael on it, because you'll have three.
Yeah, we'll have to well, that's why we started advertising it as
Yes.
both. So we would just have to shift that to being, instead of utilities, streets, infrastructure, and utilities is advertised as a,
And which meeting schedule would you like to keep, the second Thursday or the third Thursday?
yeah, let's do the second Thursday because the third Thursday is the sewer meeting, so it'd be better to have it as the second.
Sewer authority, 7 PM on the third Thursday,
6:30,
6:30.
Yes.
And it's here this year,
Yes.
so we'll be meeting.
Does
here
anybody,
this
everybody
Thursday.
follow that?
No, tell me again.
Personnel, legal, and IT doesn't change, third Tuesday at 6 PM.
Oh, I was just looking at meeting times.
I'm gonna go. all-
Okay,
all-
okay, go ahead.
Communication, finance, administration doesn't change, membership, we have an opening there, first Thursday at 6:30 PM. Utilities is going away altogether. Public safety doesn't change, Deborah Crawford will chair, the members stay the same, that one, I don't wanna call it full, but it's got probably the biggest complement other than Parks and Rec. And that's the first Monday at 6 PM. Streets and infrastructure will add utilities, Jeffrey Kirkhoff chair, members Christie and Roger, Mike Wolfersberger as the community member. Meet second Thursday at 6 PM. Fleet and facilities, no change from what's posted, other than we need a meeting date and time for recurring meetings.
Yep.
Do you know that tonight, or do you want?
There's not that much going on.
Okay.
Do we need the committee?
Pardon?
Do we need the committee if there's nothing happening?
I prefer to be there if we need it, yes.
Would it make sense to put streets with fleet and facilities? And keep utilities and infrastructure together? Sounds like there's several items that come up even tonight for streets
Yeah, I mean,
that aren't necessarily utility related. We want to give that to Frank's committee.
my concern there is that the utilities meeting hasn't really done very much. And like, we haven't had much to talk about the meeting, so if we take out streets, then we're just having another meeting. Because most of what gets talked about at sewer, and then it comes to here.
What if we maybe have a night that we advertise, we can always post that facilities and fleet is canceled those nights if you don't meet, but that way we have it advertised, so we don't need to do one-off ads. And then if Mr. Hefty needs to have a meeting,
Yeah.
something comes up, then he has that.
Frank, you're already gonna be at the streets and the infrastructure, right?
No, that's gonna be Christie and you.
Okay.
Those two will change to you.
But you could do third Thursday at 6.
Can't,
'Cause-
sewer authority.
No, you can do
No,
six.
utilities.
And they can meet up
Utilities
there.
is canceled now.
The reason we didn't wanna do it is because if we were meeting,
Right.
we couldn't be at both meetings at once, but it could easily be that night, because sewer would be meeting later, and you could have a meeting up there and back here at the same time. It's not that's an open night where somebody's already in the building, and maybe worthwhile to have minimize
The
having
overlap,
the building
the
open.
overlap would be Roger.
Yeah.
So what if we advertised it as 5:30 on that second Thursday? and then if we don't need it, we don't need it.
If you had, if you really had to miss,
Is that okay with you?
we've all missed sewer.
You're putting up with
Well,
5:30 on street.
Sewer's the third Thursday.
No, 5:30 on fleets and
He's saying
facilities,
second.
facilities,
They're talking
No, they're saying,
before this meeting.
He's,
no, third Thursday, you're talking about, right?
he said second.
You had said second earlier.
No, that's, we went to second so that we weren't overlapping, me and Roger with sewer. I was saying meet that.
Sewer is the third.
Right, I was saying have Roger's committee meet the third Thursday.
Frank's.
Frank's committee meet the third Thursday. So then we have the building open already, it's.
Third Thursday is
less
good for you?
Who's on first? I guess so.
At 5:30, and that gives an hour before the sewer authority,
Yeah.
if we have a meeting. Okay, I'll put this all together, Kathy, so you have it.
Okay, I'm trying to write it
I know,
down.
I'm sure it's hard to follow. Parks and Rec will keep Roger as chair, Chris as a member, Daryl, Tanya, and Margie, and Amy. Was there another community member on the Parks and Rec committee?
Not that was appointed from here, there's other people that show up
Right.
and help, but
Okay.
I think they were, because that was the whole Park and Rec board
Versus
and Park
committee?
and Rec committee and all of that, that I
The
don't
only other
understand.
member would have been Mary Jane Ritter.
Well, Linda never resigned, did she?
Mary Jane was better than a vacancy.
No, I know, but Linda Britcher's still,
Right,
and Mary Perry,
and,
and Mary Jane.
yes. Yes,
Because there's the Park and Rec board and there's a Park and Rec committee, and I really don't understand the difference.
neither way, you don't.
We just show up and we do stuff.
And then revitalization development, Chris Adams as chair, and then the rest will be the same. The only thing we need to know is the meeting date for revitalization and development.
I had I had made several suggestions. The only one I could come up with that doesn't have a conflict was the second Tuesday. But with me out of the mix, that might open things up.
We have already advertised it at
Any
the,
night of the week, anytime, so it's gonna depend on.
Well, it's currently advertised for the second Wednesday at 6:30.
That's fine with me.
Does that work for the rest of the?
Yeah,
Well, I
Lisa,
can tell you
Lisa
that-
Landis won't be able to make it.
Yeah, Lisa takes the lead on a lot of projects from that. She's probably been.
Well, between her and the Penn Township people, lately,
Well,
the
yeah,
Penn
yeah.
Township people have been, that meeting's becomes somewhat of like a joint meeting with Penn Township's version of the same thing.
Okay.
They were, I had some communication with them, they had said pretty much schedule it with your guys' availability and we'll send who we can any given night. So,
You said about it Tuesday?
yeah, Lisa's good on Tuesdays and
Okay.
Thursdays, anytime after about 6:15.
Why don't we do the Tuesday at like 6:30, second Tuesday, 6:30? Does that, doesn't conflict with you
No, I should,
or Chris?
and Ryan's only here for.
Christie has certain conflicts from month to month with it, but she said she'll do what she can.
So second Tuesday at 6:30?
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you know about Sharon?
Her availability changes so much. It's
I
an
mean,
endless thing.
Ryan, when Ryan's here, he'll be here, and when he's not here, so.
I will firm this all up based on the discussion, because I think I have all the notes correct, and I'll send it out to everybody. And then that way, if they can be advertised all in one, and we'll be good for the year. But I know it was a little bit challenging last year trying to keep track of it. And that was part of the reason I wanted to have this discussion this evening. But is everybody in consensus with that? So we'll move on then to standing committee, or standing council committee reports, Mr. Epley under facilities and fleets.
What I have tonight is that the truck we bought from Penn Township has been presently inspected, and I checked on it today. They're adding the cinder spreader on the back. Mike looks like he's doing a real good job of making his own brackets to mount that back there. And one other thing, we have to number the trucks now, and we also have to placard them because they're now considered commercial vehicles. And if the manager has anything to add to that, go ahead.
I was told that by Mike. We do have placards for, we have stickers with the old logo. I don't see any sense in spending money for new ones or switching. I know Mike had talked about magnets, but we already have these.
When you say number them, that's the PUC numbering?
No, just
1, 2,
1, 2, 3,
Okay.
and that can be a simple, we can get simple stick-on numbers to handle
Is
that.
there any PUC numbering required?
No.
No.
Okay.
That's what we thought at first.
Yeah, that's what I,
Because
when
when
he said
it went
when I
down
said
for
commercial.
inspection, they asked, no, we don't
Basically, it's
need
just a fleet
DOTs, we
number.
don't
Okay,
need none of
okay.
that.
I
Just
didn't think
each
so.
truck has to have a number.
Like a fleet number.
Who's number one? Dave Keene's truck. Who's number two?
Okay.
Better be a brown one.
Anything else, Mr. Edwards?
That's all I have at the present time here.
Just a question on the fleet. Is there, I've never spread cinders, is there an adjustment on those spreaders for like how much output
Yes.
there is? And the reason I ask, and I'm not, this is not a complaint, but it seems like the most recent spreading, there was an awful lot of product on the roads. And I don't know if that was intentional because of the ice and the questionable ice, but it seemed like there was just an awful lot of product on the road. Maybe overkill, but maybe not, I don't know.
It's, the spreader's hydraulically operated, and
Basically, it opens like a valve or
there is a motor turning the screw.
Right.
And I'm not sure how it comes out of the truck, what gate it goes through. I didn't see that on the back of the truck there.
There's one gate at the end.
Did
At the
you-
end underneath the spinner.
Did you
The only
think it
place
seemed
it
like
drops.
the right amount?
Which, you're talking about the real heavy ice, the Wednesday.
The most recent?
Yeah, that'd have been Wednesday morning.
Yes.
They put extra on.
Okay.
Because it started to thaw and then it refroze.
Okay,
So
I'd
they
rather be
went
safe
up.
than sorry, like I said, it's not.
But
a
how
complaint, I
that
just trying to
works,
understand it.
in the long trough cross there's an auger.
Mhm.
And that'll take the cinders over to the spreader point. You can run the speed of the auger slow, fast, you have like 1 to 10. The same way with the spinner, 1 to 10. So it depends. The spinner you don't want running real fast, you're gonna bounce it off houses, you
Right,
know what I
right.
mean? So you bring that down, the auger is what determines the amount of product being dropped.
Yeah, as long, I mean, you've done it, so you know what a reasonable amount is, it just seemed like a lot compared to other times.
Yeah, because Dave says I gotta get the street sweeper out this.
Well, that
Yeah, so
was the
without
thing that made me
today.
think of it today, was they went
Yeah.
and swept a lot of it up today. And is
Yeah.
any of that able to be reused when it's out of the street sweeper?
You have to clean it first. I'm kidding.
It's,
You can go down.
No. it picks up too much other debris. You
Yeah.
throw back in, and you gotta watch, then you have the possibility of clogging your auger, your spinner when you're out.
Just a thought, trying to.
Yeah, I
Trying
understand,
to
Craig, I
recycle
wish there
something.
was.
I don't
But that's
know.
one of the reasons years ago, we switched to the sandstone. Because sandstone will break up for you, it's smaller than your limestone will.
It's also, I think, more visible than the, was it limestone before?
Yes,
So I think it's more visible, so you see it on the street, so, you know, in turns and things, not that we're going that fast in the borough, but, you know, you're not
Right.
hopefully gonna skid on it and roll your vehicle.
now Wheatfield's grinding glass,
Yes, yep, they have a glass crusher they use and add that in the product.
yep, the grinding glass.
Wheatfield used to get ash from the state prison in Camp Hill, and, really liked it, did a good job on the roads,
Yes.
but I guess DEP issued something, they couldn't do that anymore, so they stopped it.
And Township used ash too, I
Did
think.
they?
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember Henry Holden talking.
They used to go down and pick it up themselves, so they didn't have it cost to truck it in,
It
and
was only
I think
the
it was
cost
free.
of getting it,
Yep.
it was free to pick up.
And they did that for a couple of years. They said the only complaints they got were it was dark. It was obviously black ash, so it was hard on paint. But
The only complaint they ever got from me was one time at the school, they dumped it heavy. So you knew what the schools look like. The kids walking in because the school district gets their salt shed. We buy 20 times a year, the school did, put it up there, so they would mix it, and they mixed that day with the black. You should have saw the carpets. They were black.
anything else, facilities and fleet? Move on to finance administration communication, Ms. Young.
The 2014 audit will be underway starting Friday. Hopefully that will be able to be completed in short order. The decision was made to work on closing out the CDs because of the varying terms and rates and all of that stuff, to put them in the respective funds. And then, once we have an idea of all of these projects that we're looking at, then make determinations of what can be reinvested, because the long-term rates are minimal. The state folks here at Break, we just had a quick conversation and they did a quick calendar glance. They're looking at probably the week of February 13th to do that joint meeting. So if everybody just wants to kind of, I don't know if you put stuff in your calendar or whatever, you might want to do that. The conversation was raised from the Penn Township meeting regarding the workman's comp reimbursement from the borough. The borough requests reimbursement from Penn and Wheatfield Township for their portion of the fire company's workman's compensation for the volunteers. The bill just came in the end of in December, and historically we saw Bob did an exceptional job looking back and seeing when we typically requested that reimbursement and when we normally got it. In that research, it was discovered that we have not requested reimbursement from Wheatfield and Penn Township since the December 2013 bill, which would have come in spring of 2014. So 40,000-ish?
Yeah.
About $40,000 will be coming in from, split between Penn and Wheatfield Township, still working through the census data, because that's based on per capita, so still working through the census data to verify amounts. I did give a heads up to Vicki Jenkins and Supervisor Fuller, and Bob's been in touch with Helen at Penn Township to warn them that they're going to be getting this invoice for 3 or 4 years.
2014, 15, 16,
And now 17, so they'll get 4 years.
That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing, and it's not a good relationship to have with our other local municipalities, that we're gonna send them 4 years of billing because we as a borough failed to send them billing for 3 years. And, you know, they all, especially Penn right now, have their own budget issues and their own budget challenges. They're trying to, you know, spend based on the previous year. They look at last year's data to create this year's budget. And so last year's data didn't have this expense, so now they're gonna get 4 times this expense.
So we pay 17 up front. Is that?
Yeah, the borough pays 100% of the workers' comp
'Cause they're
premium
workers'
annually.
No, I'm just making sure that we're paying 17 now.
Correct, the bill that
The
comes in
bill is
December.
20.
Yeah.
The bill is $20,463, and on average, Penn Township's portion was a little over $8,000 a year, and Wheatfield was $6,005, so that's 14 grand a year. So Christine and I were talking about this. It is exactly what you said, Craig. It's embarrassing. It's a financial hardship, to be sure. We talked about ways of doing this. We talked about maybe doing 1 invoice per year.
Especially now that their budgets are already approved.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Supervisor Fuller said to me, "We're not destitute." I said, "Well, we are." So
Well, I
they
don't
must
think,
have the
it might not be
resources.
Wheatfield that we're concerned about.
I don't think it is. I think Wheatfield won't like it.
Right.
And I sit at their meetings, so I'll hear about it, I'm sure. But, you know, Penn's got their share of financial issues right now, as
Yeah.
we've seen. They've been a little more, I won't say quiet about it, but they haven't been as forthright, I don't think, as we have, as early as we have. So, you know, they've got challenges as well. I think we all do, and for us.
So when are we sending them this bill?
Well, we were discussing, we wanted to wait until this meeting till all the full council was informed, but I needed to get some census data because when I went back and researched the 2013, which is the last time that we billed, we had gotten census data from Susquehanna School District, and that was used as a basis on a spreadsheet and calculated percentages. I contacted Susquehanna School District a couple of weeks ago, and they weren't able to give me that historical data. They were only able to give me 2017. So I had 2017s, I had 2013s, 12s, 11s, and such. So I'm going to try and come up with some sort of weighted average, some sort of way to average an increase in each of those years based on what the current, or decrease depending upon what the census is now compared to what it was in 2013.
You know where it's at.
Exactly. So what the tough part is, you know, they're going to be able to say, well, we can't rely on your information, but at least we got 2017 and 2013. So I think there's an argument to be made. If we break it up incrementally, maybe we do 1 invoice per year. It's a bunch of work. I don't know.
My recommendation is we bill them, and if they can't do it, they let us know,
Like
and then we
even,
work through it
I
from
don't
there.
know, maybe not, they, you know, send them a bill. I mean, they know obviously, but
Yeah, we've
If
given
one of
them
them says, oh yeah, we'll pay it now, fine. If somebody says, hey, we can't right now, can we come up with something, let's come up with
Yeah, I
something.
think we worked with them because it was our fault.
It was our, yeah. And
But,
that's,
you know-
that's historically how the borough, because the fire company is headquartered, the corporate headquarters are in the borough.
Right.
So we are responsible legally to pay that volunteer workers' comp. And then we've had a really good relationship for many years with Penn and Wheatfield. For whatever reason, we don't bill Reed, although if you look at their call data, Duncannon Fire Company had the same number of calls in Wheatfield Township as they do in Reed Township in 2016. However, since this is based per capita, Wheatfield's got 3,500 people approximately, and Reed's got a couple hundred. But because of the US Highway, they've got call volume, the truck stop and sheets and everything. So it's been historically done based per capita, and that's, I think, probably the most equitable way to do it.
That's how it's required to be done.
Is that, oh, I was not aware of that, okay.
And I actually, on behalf of a Liverpool borough, sued its neighboring townships in order to get them to pay their fair share. There was
I never realized that was-
quite a dispute about it.
But it is definitely based on per capita, that is the basis of,
Population.
okay.
Population.
Okay.
It has to be
Should
based on
be
population.
paying too.
Should
A lot of
Reed
times the
Township be paying?
insurance company will break it up.
I think so.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to find another, so I
It
wanted to
is,
go
it's
into
like a
this
couple
with
hundred-
data.
It's like a couple
It's hard to
hundred.
say,
I mean, when
I
you look
hate
at
to
it
go back in
percentage-wise,
arrears
it's
4
probably
years
so
and say, well, this is
minimal.
based on
When you
estimates.
look
Then
at
it
the
would only
total
be-
population.
Because here it is now and here it was
Right,
then.
because we
I mean,
only
you
cover
can-
up to Rupp Road, I think is the,
I mean, maybe that's true now, but
oh, okay, so, yeah, so it would just be the island.
I don't
which
know,
would be-
it might just be that carrier,
I guess
it may not be
once
what they were doing.
county
and I guess they don't really have room for expansion.
or
Like, my worry is you say, let's, it doesn't
They
matter now, but
used
if it ever
school
mattered.
district census data in the past, so
That's
that was
right.
my first area I went.
Does anyone have a sense for, the fire company covers pretty much only the island portion of Reed Township. So there's almost no population there. There's 4 houses maybe.
Right.
You know, we're talking, I would be surprised if there's more than 20 people actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So,
not, yeah. it's
You know,
That's
there's,
what it's based on.
unfortunately, there's little hope in collecting
Right.
from that.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, however, the call bunch, they've got a demand, they use the service. As much as Wheatfield Township, which surprised me, but as much as Wheatfield Township last year, they had 66 calls in each. So, I guess until the formula is changed or the procedure is changed on that billing, that's not
You can't bill the businesses that create the traffic, that create most of the traffic?
No, because it's an intermunicipal, it's based on the,
It's just the
the
township,
governments, right.
that's
in a
it.
Commonwealth, yes.
Yeah. So, you know, yeah, it's the pits, kudos to Bob for finding it, you know, working on getting all the data, you know, came to the finance committee with everything prepared and put together, so. We're working through
Also at the regular December meeting for Penn Township, Helen mentioned it, it might have been their budget meeting, that they
Right.
hadn't received a bill yet this year. And I immediately emailed, at the meeting, you know, I think Chris and
Chris,
Christie,
yeah.
and said, you know, where does this stand? And she didn't mention that it hadn't been billed for a couple of years, she just mentioned they hadn't received this year's bill, or last year's bill now. So that's, I think, part of what started the
The ball
inquiry.
rolling,
So,
absolutely.
you know, they weren't trying to avoid it or trying to deny it, they brought it up at the same time we discovered, and at the same time the bill showed up, so it's, in the process of being worked out, but I just wanna make sure the record reflected that happened.
That's all I have.
Anything for Christie under, Finance Administration Committee? Move to Parks and Recreation, Mr. Williams.
I'm asking for permission to close Market Street April 29th from Rachel to Clark, and Apple Alley from Rachel to Clark. That's for the Sled Fest, the police car show. They close them at 6 in the morning, I believe it's 6 to 5, I believe. Yeah, the show runs till 4.
Haven't been there yet.
I will make that motion. I will also request that we contact the properties in the area that are affected, because that was one of their complaints last year, is they didn't even know this event was gonna go on, and then they couldn't get out of their driveway. So that we make sure we notify the residents that are affected.
We have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Young, and a second by Mr. Cronfarmel, to approve the closure of Market Street on the 29th, Saturday, the 29th of April, 2017. Market Street and Apple Alley between Rachel and Clark Streets from 6 a.m. until 5 p.m. Any further discussion? All those in favor, give their consent by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr.
The
Wood?
only other thing I have is car show is scheduled for June 4th up on Cooper Field. I don't know, do you have any times for your spring fling?
Don't get it.
Okay.
Anything,
That's all
Mr.
we
Wood?
have tentatively. And thanks everyone for New Year's Eve. Chris, thank you, your office staff, and your employee, your road crew. There's so many of these things we can't do without you people.
We'll pass that along to them, thank you.
Anything else from Mr. Williams? Personnel, legal, and IT, we met this evening, just went over some housekeeping items. I don't have anything to report this evening. For that. Does anyone have anything for me on those things? I'm sure once the EIP comes forward, we'll have some IT issues especially to review and consider. Move on then to public safety, Mr. Crawford.
We had some further discussion on the emergency operations plan, the very brief meeting this month. And I reached out without response to the state police to ask them to be here for a future meeting. Haven't had any direct contact with them. I'm gonna try it by phone this time and see what I can do.
The Lieutenant Bernard and Sergeant Light, the two over here in August,
Yeah.
have been pretty receptive for phone calls and calls for me. I don't know if that's something that top spam folder or something.
Yeah, it could be. That's why I'm gonna try by phone. Maybe they aren't getting it or something, or maybe it's somebody different now. I don't know.
Trooper Starliper is was, at least in May, their community guy.
Oh, okay.
So he may, if you can reach out to him specifically, he's the one that came out for our mock crash assessment. So if he's no longer, usually the evidence guy is also the one that does the community service, the posting checks and that. He features Sarah now, the last I knew it was Trooper Starliper. Anything else? Anything for Mr. Croftheimer under public safety? Move on to streets and infrastructure, Mr. Burkhoff.
Well, we've discussed,
Streets
I
and
guess,
infrastructure and utilities.
yeah, I think we've discussed most of the, what's happened so far in the past month. Chris, do you have anything to add? I was down here for what, I thought we were having the meeting last Thursday, but we did not have the meeting last Thursday. Chris, do you have anything else to add?
No, the only other thing is that I have started a list of street signs. When I was doing checking the snow emergency routes, I noticed a couple places where we have none or where they're badly faded. And I think there are some places where we need to look at getting them just so that, because, frankly, I mean, me being from out of town and not knowing all the streets by name, I'm kind of a good example of if somebody's trying to find someplace in the borough.
We've talked about Rachel, who's one that seems to disappear the whole way out.
Yeah,
Somebody's
and
got a girlfriend named Rachel.
there were a couple other spots too, but I'll complete that and check the rest of town and get a more complete inventory.
I had a question, Linda Bridger at the pub asked me about, there's a pair of no parking signs on Ann Street adjacent to Sorrento's on the east end of Ann Street. They don't have a time restriction with them, they're in the grassy area where it's adjacent to the deck in the back. And they just say no parking.
Down going in,
Almost at the
Yes.
access to the river.
Usually where my car's parked.
down on the left side, when you're coming down.
If you're
from the west
facing Market on the right-hand side.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
There's two of them there, and like I said, there's no restriction, there's not even curbing or sidewalk there, in the grass. I recall them going in when Mr. Guanera was on council, and they were going in, I believe, for deliveries back there. I don't know that many deliveries actually take place back there. I don't know if that was included when we redid the streets and parking ordinance in 2014. But if they're not valid signs, they should come down, and if they are valid signs, perhaps we should consider whether they should be there. I don't know if Sorrento's uses them. If they do, they.
I always wondered why they were there.
They probably don't have deliveries after 4 o'clock in the evening, so maybe they do need to have some kind of time limit associated with it. But I think more so than the square, the intersection of Ann and Market is congested for parking, because you only have parking on one side of Market and only north of the pub, up to the post office. Not even up to the post office, only up to Jones. And you have Sorrento's parking lot, which I know there have been issues there, people parking in Sorrento's parking lot that aren't there for Sorrento's. And you have Ann Street, you park on both sides, but it's, it's congested. I know there's a lot of parking issues there. So, Chris, if you, or the streets committee, or whoever, can just look at whether they're valid signs. If they're not, they can just come down, I think.
I always wondered why they were there.
I believe, I won't
You're
swear
right.
to it, but I'm pretty sure Mr. Guinera pushed for them when he was here, because that was a delivery area for certain, but Linda asked me when I was in for lunch a couple
Yeah,
weeks
because
ago.
most of the deliveries I see, they're
On
down
Yeah,
there.
on the
Market
street.
Street, on the middle of the street, they won't take the rig back in the back alley.
Those signs were put up for an unloading,
It doesn't even say loading zone.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
for truck parking. I did notice a truck in there the other day when I come through town. There was
Oh.
one parked in there.
Well, I mean, most of the times the trucks will be coming in, there's probably not many people parking there anyways. Like, you're not getting many deliveries in
Yeah, I
at 8
don't-
o'clock at night.
Cause that side door is probably where their kegs go down. Like their other beer would go up front, but their kegs might go down that, cause that ramp goes down to where they're stored.
Well, you would change it from no parking to loading zone from this
Yeah.
time to that time.
9 a.m. till 4 p.m.
I mean,
Or
I-
even find out
that's
when
what I
they
do, I
get, if
deliver
they're most of their
everything
deliveries in the
nowhere.
afternoon, do it in the, I know, I've
We
driven
can
down
check
there
on that
before.
and,
Yeah.
Or if there's
You
a
know-
certain day or certain set of days or something, you know.
we can check on that and I can check with
Because right now,
Samantha
I mean,
and
right now
Sam.
it just says no parking.
We'll send one in.
That'd be another,
Two spots.
I would say 2 or 3, depends how people park in there, you get 3
If he
spots.
goes
I've gone to
underneath
You've gone
that
to grass
truck there,
before.
but he, I think he likes having those there, so.
Well, I'm not gonna ask him if he likes them, I'm gonna ask him when he gets deliveries and where they come and, you know, we're looking to accommodate all businesses is the way we'll phrase it and just surveying and
You'll
we'll
get
find
sworn
out.
at in Italian, that's good.
No, you made me special tonight, you, special cheese on my pasta, made up for the waitress for getting the sausage, so it was,
Anything else under utilities?
We haven't had a
Street
utilities,
temperature.
well, yeah, we haven't had a utilities meeting since Mr.
I think that, I fully agree with combining utilities and infrastructure, I think that makes sense. They were separated before, so I've kind of gone with the way they had been.
We had that was the first couple meetings, we were having conversations, we're like, which committee does this fall under, so.
No, I think combining them makes
One thing I
and
want
it
to
gives
bring
each
up,
of the 7 members one committee, and so they'll have to do it.
what I want to bring up in the utilities meeting is a street light, a separate street light account. Since we had that question arose to us last month. And something else there might have to be some separate audits, budgets done for some of these accounts and presented to council.
Christie will be there as the finance person too. So, anything else? Chris, I doubt you have a report on redevelopment.
I do not.
Or,
We didn't even have a meeting.
It's not on the agenda.
Well, yeah, we actually, we did, wait.
Oh, yeah, you did have a meeting with Penn Township.
I was there.
I talked to Daryl, we weren't
I
there.
wasn't there, but Christie was there and she ran a meeting.
That's right, you had
and
a
if we
meeting.
could just put that as letter F under the standing committees then.
John Gerner came from Penn Township, and Chris and I were there. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation looking into doing surveys and things like that, looking at data and, Chris's comment, and I agree, is, we're more at a point in the borough that we need to be attacking blight, improving the tax base, and, it's what all this stuff looks like. I don't know. So we've got some other things that we need to be working on. So I don't know if this meeting is going to continue to be together or if it's going to be like a subcommittee. Chris can figure that out. But we did have a discussion about he was pushing for a survey, and we're already doing a survey at the county level through the Economic Development Authority of all the businesses in the county. So this would be not just the businesses, this would be the residents to get an idea of what they're looking for and what they want to do. So the discussion was, we don't have any money for that. Great idea, we're not ready yet. So we didn't make any progress really.
Anything else for revitalization development? Move on to then number 12, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business on the agenda?
We better find something else to talk about because we can't get out of here at quarter
We
after
sure can. Number 13, new business. Where do you want to do the EIP?
I'm just gonna hand them out to you.
Maybe after the
I have as it in my written report, draft copies for all of council of the EIP report. So that you know, Mr. Morgan knows how to spell plane and floodplain as opposed to an airplane, but he dictated it and his secretary. There's some things like that that are in it. It is a draft, It is not a public document, it is not a public record, it's not for sharing outside of yourself, but Marita and DCD said even though they haven't finished their review of it yet, which will then, it'll be official, and Mark will present it to you, it's not going to change significantly. This will give you a chance to familiarize yourself, formulate questions that you might have when Mark makes his presentation at next month's meeting. So it'll kind of give us a head start on being ready to process the information. There's a lot in it. You'll have some heavy reading. It includes, not just the financial information and the management audit and so forth. It also has historical data and trends analysis, and like I say, there's a lot in there, a lot to digest.
And just so you don't feel like you're wasting your time, Marita did indicate she still has to get her comments back to Mark, but they're very minimal. It's nothing that's gonna change content, so.
She said that tonight, that they're pretty much done, just has to get delivered.
Yeah, and she's just.
We're gonna be talking on Thursday, so probably early next week, mid next week, we should have a final draft, but she said to me tonight, there's no content changes that are gonna change any of the recommendations or the analysis that led to the recommendations.
And that process is we retain Mark to prepare that recommendation or that plan, and then DCED as the funding agency reviews it, makes, any substantial or non-substantial.
Yeah, if they see that I'm just an idiot or something, they'll say, hey, you missed A, B, C, D, or whatever, or you didn't consider, but, there was nothing that they identified in the report that we didn't adequately address.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. Thank you.
You'll see in it too, there's a laundry list of recommended things to consider. My suggestion is that once we formally accept the report, that we then put together a spreadsheet, assign tasks to different committees to examine them and decide, because there's nothing mandatory. It's up to council to determine what recommendations it feels it wants to follow and what recommendations it rejects.
One of the things I will say to you that Marita passed on to me this evening is that as you're reading the report, if you think there are things in there that you feel you want to prioritize, we can apply as a borough for Phase 2 EIP funding right now. Okay, to take care of, for example, one of the things in there I think you need, that I recommend, is a long-term capital plan for all the funds, tied into a rate study that is done particularly on the utilities, because the rates are insufficient to provide for the capital and the deferred maintenance of the systems. The EIP plan would basically help you pay for a rate study on all the utilities to get your rates set at right levels. So if there's something in there when you see the recommendations that you believe is most critical to the borough to pursue, if it's pursuing some type of merger or something with Penn Township, there are grants out there to pay for that, not necessarily EIP grants, but we can get Marita's assistance to do that as well, to study those issues. So when you look at those recommendations, if you can think about prioritizing those recommendations in your own minds, I have my own set of thoughts on that I'll share with you when we go through the report, but I think in terms of if you just believe there's something better for the community in terms of priority, that's fine. But we can apply for additional EIP funding now, tomorrow, and there is, as she said to me tonight, a lot of EIP money available right now.
And that was, I think, part of the whole mentality with, at least in my mind, of pursuing this, was that going through this process, although it may seem trivial to some, does open up some potential for some funding.
Yes, that you could not otherwise get.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
I will mention that we have at least 2 computers in the building that when you turn them on, sometimes you have to hit the button twice for.
I was gonna say, let's get technology.
Yeah, the fan
I don't even need
message and so forth.
For that.
Well, it's in the report.
I assumed
Well,
we've had that conversation. I assumed it would be. Let's apply for that tomorrow.
With council's blessing, I'll start putting together, we'll work on putting together a plan and bring it back, and then for council's approval, and then we can apply for that.
Can we put technology and security together?
I assumed they were together. I assumed that'd be a linked system.
We'll look at what we can.
The other issue you have is you really have no disaster recovery or contingency at all. I mean, you don't even have adequate battery backup to shut down what you have properly.
we talked about a continuity of operations plan here.
That's
months ago.
exactly in there.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, right now, if you had a major power failure, you would have a system crash. And potential loss of data, depending how fast the system crashed. So,
Thanks, Mark.
Anything else? Unfinished or
I go, boy, it hasn't happened.
We know.
What happened with the Boy Scouts and the Christmas trees? That they were told to stop selling them?
The Boy Scouts selling Christmas trees.
Yeah, it came up
Uh,
last meeting, they were selling them on the road.
There was a situation
Just
in the
up from
borough.
Just up from the post office?
Yes.
They've been selling them there for, I've lived here 10
This-
plus years, and they were told they had to stop selling them.
No, that's an
The
erroneous
Boy
report.
Scouts haven't sold trees there.
They were not the Boy Scouts selling them.
Okay.
And here's what happened.
Scoutmaster sells trees there.
What happened was I had no idea who it was, but as I was driving through town, and as the zoning officer, I saw this activity that is not permitted in that zone. And so I stopped and I talked to the guy who was there. It was, I wanna say, 3-4 days before Christmas. And what I said to the gentleman was, I said, well, you know, it's against the zoning. I said, what, Christmas was a Sunday, right? I said, if I come back by here on Tuesday and you're still selling them, we might have to give you a stop order. And I kind of nodded and winked at him. Subsequently, the owner of the property, who is involved in the sale of the Christmas trees, contacted, I believe it was Mr. Epley, and I got a note to give him a call. I called him, talked to him, and we talked about the situation. And the way we left it was that sometime here in the spring, he's going to submit a zoning permit application. I told him we will waive the fee because that'll just give me the information necessary to review it. And then what we'll have to make a determination is whether or not it is a pre-existing non-conforming use. I'll have to consult with Mr. Dissinger at that point, you know, once we get to that point. And then if he is not happy with the determination, if it is, you know, adverse to that, there are avenues of appeal. So the idea that we talked about was let's get the ball rolling early in the year so we can have it. You know, if he needs to go to the zoning hearing board for, you know, any kind of an appeal, then there's plenty of time to do that and resolve it before next Christmas.
I was in the scouting program the whole way through, and I knew at one time that was a scouting fundraiser, but I was in the program from 91 until 98, and that was.
And the property owner did tell me that it was no longer the scouts doing it because of issues with the scout rules about how much supervision they have to have and so forth was the reason I was told.
Too deep leadership was always a challenge, because you have to have 2 leaders present. Anything else under unfinished or new business?
The dates on here, like, for the meeting, I guess this is void?
Yeah, I'm gonna put all of it together
Okay.
and get it to everybody, and then that document, the council meetings don't change, but the committee meetings may change a little bit, so we'll
Right, okay.
properly
Just wanted to
advertised.
make sure.
Yeah, those were the dates that were advertised based on the last year's meeting schedule, so that we could begin meeting, but we can always change them.
We'll move on to public comment number 14, the public that remains. Does anybody have anything? Is there anything else from the table? Next regular meeting will be Tuesday, February 21st, 2017, looking at probably the week before for our informational session based on CEDACOG's invitation.
Motion to adjourn.
First by Mr. Crotharmel, second by Mr. Epley to adjourn. Any discussion? All in favor, you start by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.